Today's public hearing. Members of the public, at this time, please take a moment to turn off or otherwise silence your phones and devices so the board can hear these cases without interruption. For these public hearings, the board reviews the correspondence submitted in support of and opposition to these cases. The board also reviews correspondence and recommendations from other government agencies in preparation for the hearings. In today's hearing, staff will present the site plans, maps, photographs, and other documents that comprise the case record. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the appellant will present his or her case to the board. After the appellant's presentation, the board will hear those wishing to speak in support of the appeal. If the appeal has opposition, the board will then hear from those parties. After the opposition presents its testimony, the appellant will have a period for rebuttal. According to the BZA rules, the appellant has 5 minutes for presentation if no opposition is present. In contested cases, the BZA rules allow 10 minutes for each side to present testimony. Should the appellant wish to provide rebuttal testimony, the appellant should reserve some portion of the originally allotted 10 minutes. At the conclusion of each hearing, the board will deliberate and then vote on that case. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases under the provisions of the Metro Zoning Code, Section 174180. All sections numbers that we refer to come from the Metro Zoning Code, which applies to the entire jurisdiction of the metropolitan government. The zoning code was adopted by the Metro Council and became effective on January 1st, 1998. I will introduce the entire zoning code and make it a part of today's record. The Metro Code requires a record of these proceedings. Because the BZA meetings are recorded for the Metro Nashville network, it is imperative that anyone addressing the board please come forward to the front table and speak into the microphone. All speakers should identify themselves by name and address and then make the desired presentation. The Metro Code requires 4 members of our 7-member board to establish quorum. The code also requires at least 4 affirmative votes to grant an appeal. In the event that 5 or more members are present, but the appeal fails to receive 4 affirmative votes, the case will remain on the board's agenda for the next 30 days. Applications that fail to receive 4 affirmative votes within 30 days of the public hearing shall be deemed denied by operation of law. Pursuant to board rules, an aggrieved party may appeal board decisions to Chancery or Circuit Court within 60 days of the entry of an order. Additionally, as per the BZA rules, an aggrieved party may file a motion for rehearing by the BZA within 60 days of the public hearing. After that time elapses, the board's decision becomes final and no further action can be taken. If your appeal is granted, you're required to obtain the permit for which you applied. A permit must be obtained within 2 years for a board approval to remain valid. It should also be noted that if false or misleading testimony is presented to the board, any board approval could be later revoked by means of a show cause hearing before the BZA. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order. All appellants have been notified by certified mail and all legal notice requirements have been fulfilled. I do have some preliminary announcements regarding cases that have been deferred. Case 2019-085 involving property at 1505 Church Street, or is that 1506? 1506 Church Street has been deferred indefinitely. Case 2019-211 at 950 Glendale Lane has been deferred to July 18th, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I would note for the board, Councilman Sledge has requested that 2019-244 involving property at 2817 West Kirkwood Avenue, as well as 2019-218 involving property at 1103 2nd Avenue South. He has requested that both of those be deferred. That would be a decision for the board to make. I did want to bring that to your attention.
Are those applicants here?
Which case are you here on? West Kirkwood.
Okay.
That's case 244. Is the applicant for case 218 on 2nd Avenue, 1103 2nd Avenue South here? Okay, both of them were here.
Yeah, and have either of you talked to Councilman Sledge?
Not. This is news.
Yeah, we just got this week. Would you have objection to deferring this for 2 weeks so you can have a chance to talk to Councilman Sledge?
I don't believe so.
Sir, is that okay? Sir, is that okay with you to defer to? All right, so, and both of those will move to the top of the docket if that's acceptable to everyone else, and I'll move that those 2 cases get deferred till the 18th to the next meeting, 18th of July.
Second.
It's case 218 and 244.
And that would be the June 20th meeting.
Actually, I'm sorry, I said July, but yeah, June, I'm sorry. It's just been one of those weeks. I'm already ahead of 4 weeks ahead of myself. Yeah, June, the next meeting in June, which is 2 weeks from today. Is everybody good with that? Then we have a motion, have a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay, those two cases will be deferred. We'll put them toward the top of the docket at the next meeting. Thank you. And yeah, please get in touch with your councilman just so he has any concerns he has, he'll know about, and we can move forward next time. Thank you.
For members of the public, our board utilizes a consent agenda at each of its meetings, plural. One board member reviews the record for each case prior to the hearing and identifies those cases which meet the criteria for the requested action by the appellant. If the reviewing board member determines that testimony in the case would not alter the material facts in any substantive way, then the case is recommended to the board for approval. We'll enter into the record those cases that have been so recommended. If anyone is here in opposition to one of the cases identified for the consent agenda, please raise your hand, make sure I see you. We'll pull it off the consent agenda and hear it in its regular order. Mr. Chairman, these are the cases that have been recommended for the consent agenda. Case 2019-079 involving property at 6503 Premier Drive. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2019-079? Seeing none, the next case is 2019-248 involving property at 2727 West Hyman Street. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 248? Next case, 2019-251 involving property at 2719 Torbett Street. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 251? Seeing none, the next case is 2019-252 involving property at 440 Humphreys Street. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 252? Next case, 2019-254 involving property at 2704 Overhill Circle. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 254? Seeing none, the next case is 2019-255 involving property at 2411 A and B Middle Street. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 255? Seeing none, the last case recommended for consent is 2019-257 involving property at 888 Carter Street. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 257? Mr. Chairman, to review, the cases on the consent agenda are as follows: 2019-079, 2019-248, 2019-251, 2019-252, 2019-255, 2019-257. Staff would solicit a vote from the board at this time.
Okay, we have a motion for the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion, have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe that passed unanimously.
Members of the public, if your case was just approved on the consent agenda, you're welcome to stay, but you are free to go. Please give our office until Monday to process the necessary paperwork to obtain your permits. Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the cases to be heard, we would like to take the opportunity to recognize any elected officials who are in attendance. Councilman Pulley, would you like to speak now or when the case comes up? Now.
Welcome. Yeah, no, you have to cut it on. There you go.
There we go. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. It's good to see you again. I wanted to speak on case number 215, which is 3502 Ruland Place. You're going to hear from attorneys on both sides of the issue who I'm sure will talk all about the legal issues surrounding this appeal. And I certainly know that you all are very well versed in that. I've seen you in action before, and I know that there are some bright legal minds on this board. I'm here to speak about the impact of this development on the long-standing character of this neighborhood. Nashville's growing, and we all know that with growth comes growing pains. As the city grows, I think it's important that we do so in a responsible manner. And as such, I think it is important that we value the existing character of our long-established neighborhoods like this one. To that end, the neighbors in this neighborhood worked together to create an area of gentle density by giving up certain property rights they had themselves to downzone their properties to RS. In doing so, they thought they were protecting their neighborhood from what's happening here. Neighbors understand that change and growth are a part of where we are now. And they simply are looking to maintain the integrity of what they have. By allowing these smaller lots to be uncovered, this type of development will completely change the existing character of what they have now. I'm simply asking that you take that into consideration when you hear from both sides on this issue, and view the neighbors' wishes when you're deliberating. I want to thank you all for your service to the city. I know it's not an easy job that you have here. Give up a lot of time to do what you're doing, so we very much appreciate the service you give our city. Thank you for the time to make these comments.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Councilmember Murphy, would you like to address the board?
I'm not sure if I can follow Councilman Pulley's applause line there. And I'm sorry to not be able to stay. I'm actually leaving from here to the airport for a Sister Cities trip, but felt it was important to rush that because this case before you, case 2019-199, which is for 201 Orlando Avenue, is that important to my neighborhood. The Neighborhood Association has taken a position to oppose this. I know you've received some letters. This is actually at the other end of my block that I live on. We have a pretty long block that Orlando basically is one big block. And so we downzoned this street to single family pretty much after I got elected. Councilman Mendez handled that for us, and we did it to prevent tall and skinnies. But this lot is an undersized lot, and it was kind of connected and provided a driveway to the lot next to it. The lot next to it had a house that was a duplex. So we, as a neighborhood, Councilman Mendez allowed for these lots to be pulled out of that down zone and stay in R6, knowing that it's a substandard lot and that there would only be one house built there, but it still is a very tall, skinny house that they're building. They have been able to receive reduced setbacks, so they are being able to build a bigger house than any of the lots around them. They're having, instead of the required 5-foot setback, it's a 3-foot setback. So I want you to keep that in mind, that they are already kind of receiving some benefits and from being a substandard lot that makes it kind of more, I guess, a fair playing field for them to get value out of their lot. Since they started construction, this has been a very dangerous intersection because they have cut down trees and limbs and placed trash and dumpsters where it is now a blind corner, and I'm shocked that there has not been a wreck that I'm aware of. I actually have rerouted myself and my traffic to go a different way because this Burgess is a very steep hill that you're coming up, and then if you're turning on Orlando, it is a completely blind curve turn because of they've quite frankly been bad developers and bad builders. Even today, actually, I mean, I'm sure once you see the signs, maybe the pictures, they usually take a picture of the sign. The grass was so tall you couldn't even see the sign, so I'm surprised if all the neighbors even knew that we were gonna be here today because you could barely see it, just bad developers on that end. So more importantly, back to why they should not receive a variance. You know me, I don't like to compromise on sidewalks. I think everybody should build them or pay for them. I could justify maybe not letting them build one on Orlando, even though the properties across the street from them have been required to build them by code. But on the Burgess side, it has to be built. If we want people to use transit, if we want people to walk down Burgess, we need a sidewalk there. And this developer, who is already getting some benefits from their having substandard, a subsized lot, this is one of those things that they need to build. I think that they've made the argument that they would have to build a retaining wall. I've been on this street for 12, 13 years now. There is a retaining wall. If they cut their grass, they would probably see that there is a retaining wall already halfway built there. So the argument that they have some kind of financial hardship because of the retaining wall, I think is not valid here. It's not valid to my neighbors or to myself. So this is right, I would say, a block off of White Bridge Road. And again, that's a heavy transit corridor. It's part of the master transit plans. If we want people who are students in the apartments about 2 blocks up Burgess to ever use mass transit, we need to make them build that sidewalk. If you want my neighbors and I to use mass transit, we need them to build that sidewalk. My roommate frequently walks to he probably doesn't want me saying this on TV, frequently walks to McDougal's, and he will take the long way and walk by Cinco de Mayo instead of going on Burgess because it's dangerous and there's not a sidewalk. We need this sidewalk. There's really no justification when they're getting, side setback bonuses elsewhere to not let them build this. So with that, I would just really ask that you make them build this sidewalk on Burgess. It is important for the pedestrian safety, it's important for the future of transit, and it's important for the overall plan.
Kathleen, there's a sidewalk now on Orlando?
On the other side of the street, north-south.
Is there not one on their property? Is there one on Orlando?
There is one Orlando across the street from them. Directly across the street, there is one on Orlando, and then about 3 parcels down is an SP that I required sidewalks, and then there's a development.
Okay, but there's no sidewalk on any of their property right now?
Right, on their side of Orlando, there is not. But on Burgess, so where they are on Burgess, up the street, there's a sidewalk. So, I mean, this is one of those where they really should be building it on Burgess. I could stomach letting them not do it on Orlando, but Burgess being allowed not to do it is just not something that should be tolerated.
So the planning commission staff had recommended that they build on Orlando and pay on Burgess, and your preference is that they build on Burgess, and that if I will ask the question and assume that let me ask the question. If the existing retaining wall required an alternative plan that didn't pull the sidewalk fully up to current standards, would you be willing to support an alternative plan for a sidewalk as long as they built the sidewalk on Burgess in Orlando?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
Can I confirm?
Yeah.
Councilman Murphy, but if they're allowed not to build, do you anticipate payment into the fund?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think any time, for this case or any, I think y'all have heard my soapbox a few times, that they should all pay, because it's either they pay or you, the taxpayer, Davidson County, is going to be paying for this later. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Councilman Hall, would you like to address the board? You want to wait? Councilman Syracuse?
Is it appropriate if I just stand, or should I bow to the peer pressure of my colleagues? And go to the,
It's your choice.
I won't take too long. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I have a few things on your agenda today, but I wanted to first bring to your attention, it was on consent, but case 2019-255, you have that listed as District 15, but I believe that's District 2, which explains why over the past few weeks I've been getting calls from the other side of the county. But anyway, that's Middle Street, unless I forgot to knock on doors 4 years ago on a street I didn't know about.
Well, and just for you in the audience, any sidewalk case that gets put on the consent agenda is on the consent agenda because they agreed to the planning department's recommendation.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't change the outcome or the analysis, I'm sure, but just so if you want to update that when you publish this. Okay, the first one I have before you is case 2019-169 over at 2256 Cabin Hill Road. Construct an addition to an existing non-conforming duplex. I am okay with this. I'm very appreciative of the applicant that they reached out to the neighborhood, and we actually had a specific community meeting about this inside of this home. And as you'll hear from the applicant, as the reason why they are expanding this duplex is for a facility for seniors with disabilities. And so they actually, like I say, reached out to the community. We had a very thorough community meeting, and they have letters, and I believe you've received letters as well. And so I will support my neighbors who are supportive of this variance. And moving on to 2019-242, which is 3 properties on Miami Avenue. Both you all and I have received a number of concerns about this. It is a variance from side setback requirements. And I understand from constituents, they're concerned because it's Miami Avenue, it's close to the Cumberland River. I do get that. So I know we need to be sensitive about the amount of density we're putting in there. I know that it does not have to go before stormwater because it's not in the zone 1 or 2 buffer. But I am representing my constituents who are concerned with this variance. So I ask for your scrutiny on that one for sure. Moving on to, I believe, I guess my next two were on consent, so I'll save us time. I appreciate your time.
Great,
Take
thank
care.
you. Thanks for being here.
I think I saw Councilman Swope. Is Councilman Swope here? Would you like to? Okay. I think that is all of the council members then, unless I missed somebody. Then absent any other announcements, I believe we're ready to proceed with the docket. First case for the board to consider today is case 2019-236 involving property at 11 Music Square East, number 403. This is an item A appeal challenging the zoning administrator's denial of a short-term rental permit. This particular permit was denied due to a court order against this property. The short-term rental ordinance states that if there is short-term rental activity at a property without a permit, the property is not eligible for a permit for 3 years. It's a mandatory 3-year waiting period. In this case, the prior owner operated without a permit. The owner was taken to environmental court. Metro prevailed, obtained an injunction for 3 years. That owner then sold the property, or quitclaimed the property rather, to the current owner who came in for a permit, and we denied it due to the court order prohibiting that issuance of the permit, and that is the issue on appeal today.
And typically on item A cases, we ask the zoning administrator if there's, I think that was a good summary, which is what we usually ask, and is if there was anything else to add from your perspective that we need to know before we hear from the people appealing your decision.
I think that Ms. Lamb's summary capably captures it.
All right. It seemed that way to me, but I just wanted to make sure you had that opportunity too. And so, okay, we will hear from the appellant, and the gist of the primary question that we typically ask is, how did the zoning administrator err? So I know that you will tell us your thoughts on that, and I also would like for you to address if we were to decide in your favor, we basically have a board ruling versus a court ruling, and why would our ruling, it seems that a court ruling would take precedent over our ruling. In this case, why would it not? And why are you appearing before us rather than appealing the court ruling?
Thank you, and happy CMA week. My name is Grover Collins with Collins Legal, 414 Union Street, Suite 1110, Nashville, Tennessee, 37219. And Chairman Taylor, I appreciate the question that you have, and that's really to the heart of it. And I won't belabor the point, as I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to read the materials that I presented. Absent from the materials, and something I found just this week, is a statute that I'd like to approach and pass out to you. When I was first looking at this, I was looking at it as a restrictive covenant, and that's what the things we've talked about. The issue here is when the judgment came down, it was P1 Investments was the one that received the judgment against it, or the injunctive relief against it. P1 was not recorded in CaseLink or any of the court records. They actually used the Roman numeral I, so it went down as PI instead of P1. So a diligent search, and in fact a title search, would not reveal this restrictive covenant. The statute that I've just provided for you, TCA 25.5.101, if you look at the highlighted portion that I've given you, specifically subsection C, speaks exactly to the question that you have. Attachments, orders, and injunctions. Injunctions is what we have here, that affect the title, use, or possession of the real estate. are applicable against a party who is not a party to the action only after an appropriate copy or abstract or a notice of lis pendens is recorded in the registrar's office of the county wherein the property is situated. So to your question, in this specific matter, because the order or injunction was not recorded, it cannot be properly affected or restricted against my client. Had this been recorded with the Register of Deeds, then I would have no argument and I wouldn't be before you. I'm not asking you to go against a court order. I'm not asking you to invalidate a court order. I'm simply saying that court order cannot apply to the subsequent purchaser for the mere fact that it's, number one, not within the chain of title, and number two, that it wasn't recorded and it doesn't comport with the statute once the injunction affecting the use happened. It's a simple argument under TCA 25-5101, and furthermore, it's a simple argument under a restricted covenant. Unless it's in the chain of title, which it's not in this case, it cannot be held against a subsequent purchaser or a remote purchaser or grantee. That's what I have, and I'll reserve the remaining if there's any questions.
Is that the zoning administrator erred by not recognizing this statute and enforcing the court judgment even when it wasn't recorded, and that the zoning administrator should have recognized that it was not recorded as it was required to have been recorded, and therefore the zoning administrator erred.
Because any other agreement or variance or anything you go into zoning and you say, you know, if we get this power line or we give you this certain thing, that is always recorded, and it's just a matter of course that they make that a recording and they put everyone on record and everyone on notice that this affects this piece of property. These injunctions and these orders are mostly silent, and you have to do a search, and even with, as I'm sure you're well aware, even a title search isn't going to reveal this. So until we start putting these, and the zoning administrator and codes in effect puts these in the Davidson County Register of Deeds, you're not putting the county or other residents on notice that this is an affected use of this property. Otherwise, they are blindly moving forward. So for that reason, I would say it wasn't being aired.
In your case, though, maybe I misread it. I thought there was a similar, not a party, but a purchaser in this situation. So wasn't that person on notice if the issue is notice?
And that is a bit confusing, and it was quite frankly confusing for me when I first started looking at it. No, there was a member of an LLC that transferred it to an LLC, and that person or the original owners and an LLC purchased that. P1 Investors bought that from the original owner. The original owner and P1 Investments thought that they could just transfer that use permit, which we're all aware we can't, that's the one big no-no. So P1 Investments then had a dispute with Metro Codes and with the environmental court as to whether or not they could use that use, because they thought they had a permit, they were grandfathered in, they could continue to do that. Then my client, Mr. Proctor, bought from P1 Investments. So contrary to there being a quit claim to my client, this is a separate transaction where he wouldn't have known about the P1 Investments and the problems they had with environmental court.
Did your client have any financial interest in P1 Investments?
No.
Or
none whatsoever. He had no interest in the property at all until this purchase.
And then, so I guess that, well, there's two thoughts. One is this is new information, and I'm not an attorney, and my first thought is, if it is as I was going to say true and simple, and so I'm not saying true in the sense that I'm not trusting your testimony, sure. But if this is factual and as simple as you say, then it would be, in my opinion, handled administratively after the attorneys here have a chance to study the issue.
I'd welcome that.
Well, I mean, I think that's fair to say. If you're right, it would be, there may be a new way to look at it. But if you're not right, then I think there may be time, and I'll ask the attorneys if they need time to help us interpret this statute and how it might relate to the original decision. If it was not indeed taken into account during the original decision. But, our lawyers may.
Well, I had studied up on restrictive covenants, and so what I would want to know is the zoning administrator, I assume y'all are just becoming aware of this new argument, a new statute like we are. Do y'all need more time to address it?
We would benefit from more time to review the question.
Okay.
That's certainly fine. I mean, that's why I anticipated that being a possibility, so certainly more time is.
So is one meeting acceptable? Then unless, are there other questions that, because we have heard the case and the appellant has presented his case, and if there are other questions that you have before we move to defer this, I think it's fair enough to ask, but if not, then we can defer. Did you have?
I think it was important to crystallize the issue, and as I understand it, Mr. Collins, just to make sure not to beat a dead horse, but your position is the zoning administrator erred because even though there was an injunction down, the zoning administrator should have looked at the statute to realize that that injunction is not effective because it was not recorded properly. Is that fair?
That's correct. And quite frankly, just as it relates to all other injunctions that happen out of the environmental court, I think it should be this is just my policy stance, these should be recorded as a matter of course. I mean, that's just to put everybody on notice, not that that's effective here.
Well, and we may be jumping, like I said, I want our legal representation to have a chance to truly review this, but I also don't want to set an expectation because I do think this is the only case of its type that we've heard in years and years and years of hearing short-term rental cases. I don't want to put the burden on the zoning administrator or staff to have to make that type of review on every case that they see. To me, it's much more appropriate to have through the appellate process like this. And if they're right, I would still rather it go that way than add a step to the zoning responsibility because it is extraordinarily rare. I mean, I don't think that we're going to see many of these because we just haven't. But anyway, that. Yeah, not well, right. So are there any other questions? Then I'll move that we defer the case till the next meeting, the next June meeting, which
June
I think
20th.
is, all right. Motion got a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Next case, 2019-160, involving property at 117 Haynes Park Drive, requesting a variance from sidewalk requirements to construct a single-family residence without building sidewalks or paying into the fund. The board will perhaps recall this case. It was at the last meeting and it was deferred so that the appellant could contact her council person. I'll give you a brief overview. Here is a zoning map showing the zoning of the property is RS 7.5. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the surrounding area. No site plan submitted by the applicant. And then finally, photographs showing you the current conditions of the property as well as up and down the street. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 160? Seeing none, the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Of course, Councilman Hall, you can speak as much as you'd like to.
All right.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for having me. Just a review from last week, I will not go over that outline again. The only other things I wanted to add or at least question is for the average person like myself, how would someone know, be aware of city codes when they go into buying a property if the previous seller or owner, if they knew, doesn't divulge that information, whether it's being disingenuous or anything or not wanting to divulge information to lose a property or lose a sale. So for like my case, when I went into buying this property, I had no idea about the sidewalk code until after the fact. And then after I've already established a budget, set it with the bank, about to close, and then I find out about this. And again, that's my hardship right now as far as trying to pay for a sidewalk or the Lewin contribution. I don't feel like this is fair to the average person to make someone pay a contribution fee or to get out of the sidewalk fee, whatever it may be. But I understand that's a code, and you guys are here to do your jobs to see fit to move forward with making those decisions. But every case is different. I ask that you just hear my case separately from all the other sidewalk code variances that you guys have come upon, and that understand that, again, I'm here to try to build a house and make a home and not invest in. I'm not trying to make a profit off of this or anything like that. This is 2 years plus in the making, and frustration of trying to buy a house and being outbidded by investors on 8 contracts. So moving forward in the future, I don't know if that's something that if we want to put sidewalks in every neighborhood, that money is taken out of property taxes or it's put into a sidewalk fund where everybody pays taxes over a 15-year period, and then you're done, and that's it. So just some food for thought, and I know that's not your guys' decision, but that's where I stand right now. And you did ask me last month what the width of my lot was. According to my lot sheet here, it is 81, I don't know if you say square feet or linear feet, 59.22 is what I have.
All right, could you share that with us?
Yes.
All right, Councilman, did you have?
Here we are again. I know you guys enjoy these particular appeals because now they've become so common. And so, you know, as a still fairly new council member, I was not responsible for your influx in these situations. But as that may be, we know there's going to be some adjustment to our sidewalk conversation here in the near future. But one of the things that we've looked at, and even in the few times that I've been here on this specific item, I have a district that does not have sidewalks. I'm almost 100% single-family homes as a quarter of the county, and there are no sidewalks in any subdivision or neighborhood that that's been built within the last 15 years. We actually have sidewalk projects on tap for opposite ends of this subdivision to actually avoid putting sidewalks in it. So at the entrance of Haynes Park Drive on the Kings Lane side, there's a sidewalk project. Averting the subdivision, there's a sidewalk project attached to the TDOT widening project on Clarksville Highway and one for Metro on the West Hamilton side. So they're bookending the actual subdivision, but no projects actually going through to actually do sidewalks. Almost everybody has, you know, especially on the Haynes Park and this subdivision, has equal setbacks, lot sizes of that nature. Right now I'm working to get an actual bus stop because there's an elderly lady that's a few doors up where the bus stop is. She actually allows people to sit on her porch to catch the MTA bus because there is no bus stop. So to put it all in context, this is just revisiting something we've talked about before. I don't have a single sidewalk in that subdivision or most of the others. We want to stay in context always, you know, with the character of the neighborhood. We'd like to have them in some places. Some places it's just not feasible currently. And one question that I had was, it was part of the conversation a few years ago when a contextual overlay was being put in on this subdivision. One of their concerns was actually, while they were going through that process, was, will we have to add sidewalks? And that was actually simultaneous to when this sidewalk legislation was taking place. It was during one of the times where we had an interim council person, but part of their understanding in doing the contextual overlay for that subdivision was that it would prevent them from having to do this very thing.
All right. No, that makes, I mean, I get it. And I know everybody, oh, I can't speak for everybody on the board, but I would guess everybody on the board would welcome any changes that the council will pass that will keep us from having to be in this type of situation, because as I know you and the applicant know, no one on this board had anything to do with the creation of this law that was unanimously passed by the Metro Council, which has taken up a good part of our lives at this point. But I totally understand your perspective and appreciate it.
Our codes codes last, do they stand for so many years and then revisited, or is just once it's passed, then that's it until?
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, once it's law until it's not. So, are there questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to ask the council person, I want to be sure I understand. What I'm hearing you say is you can live without the sidewalk if there are no sidewalks in this neighborhood.
Absolutely.
But
That
what
was
is-
one of their concerns.
Yes, but what is your position on the payment in lieu? I mean, that's what continues to come before us.
Well, and that was one of the issues coming into council after this had taken place was, as a concern for myself, was it did not take into account, to me it was a little short-sighted, it did not take into account what you guys have been dealing with now in so many of these applications. You know, I was here just a month ago for a church in that same community 2 blocks away on a T-Dot widening project on Clarksville Highway where they're adding sidewalks. The church was being asked to pay for sidewalks or pay the in lieu of fee. And it just, you know, we got the exemption for that because it was obvious that that made no sense because of that situation. But this is the common theme for this district in this particular area. All of these subdivisions are similar in some way. Now, where on that main street on opposite ends of this subdivision, like I said, where sidewalks are going in, each eventually connects to or goes near a school or a park. So the sidewalks make sense there.
Yes, I mean, what is the distance where there's no sidewalk from one end to the other of this neighborhood?
You mean through the actual subdivision?
Yes, just roughly. Is it 1 mile or 5 miles?
I would say maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles. So they're, again, because they're where the schools are, on those main corridors, we're near the parks where people are needing and asking for sidewalk projects. Even the one that's on the opposite end of this subdivision, on the West Hamilton side, that's a place where, because it goes down and connects to a park and is near a strip mall and shopping area, it's more necessary, it's more of a concern and a request for the constituents. But inside that actual subdivision, it just doesn't make sense if you actually look at how those lots are structured and set up.
Are there any other questions? Do you all have anything else to add? No?
No, do not.
All right, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. My predecessor was of the belief that in rare exceptions when you had a councilman who was one that didn't come very often, we certainly have some that come all the time, but if you had someone who didn't come very often and said that this was in the best interest of their neighborhood and of the applicant, that was the type of exception that would warrant a variance. And this board has acted in many cases in that regard, not necessarily all. But we have a relatively new board, and not sure how you all feel about that.
I think there still has to be a hardship, and I think even though it's unfortunate, I understand that when this falls on people who go to build or redevelop, that the money that's paid into the in lieu of fund really does benefit a community because it's money that can be used to build sidewalks in the future. And I mean, the Metro Council did pass this unanimously, and I don't see a hardship in this case. And I appreciate your position, and I appreciate your councilman's position. But I feel like in these cases, the law being what it is, that my hands are tied unless there's some type of hardship, and I don't see a hardship.
Yeah, well, there is on the property, NES, or, all of the power boxes that you see that any sidewalk would run dead into, and including some that are actually on this property. And the lot is, in my opinion, much larger than the average lot. You know, you're talking about an 81-foot lot is a very, very large lot. So I don't know that I would support a full payment because of those things that I think make it different.
I agree. I think I've usually taken the position that if a council person takes the time to come in, particularly with regard to the waiver of the fee, I try to be respectful of that, particularly for individual owners, particularly in this situation where the lot size is larger and we do have the electric boxes that I think could constitute a hardship. So, you know, I would tend to grant the request not to build and not to pay. And I can make that a motion if we want to try that. So I'll call that a motion to grant the request not to build and not to pay.
That's a motion. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no. Raise your hand. So that motion fails. More thoughts?
No thoughts, no new thoughts other than what Mr. Pepper's already said.
I'll throw something else just to see if it has any traction. But I'll move that we grant a variance of 60 of the 80 feet because of the hardships of the power and the compelling testimony of the councilman.
Can we do that?
Mm-hmm. Right? A 60-foot variance, meaning they'd be responsible to build or pay for 20.
I think y'all can do that. And that would just be a condition of the
Because
variance.
we've done it for HPRs, and that's what we said. So that is a motion. There may not be a second.
And I would support that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
Do you have some idea of what the cost?
It's $150,
Yeah, what the
$150 a foot, so that would be $3,000
Okay.
versus.
I thought it was 152, so maybe we should let them.
Well, I mean, give or take. I mean, I'm not putting the dollar figure on it, but it's, give or take.
$3,000, give or take.
Yeah, versus 80 feet times versus, $12,000 for a neighborhood that doesn't have anything. But again, as we have said before, and I didn't mean that to come across in a way that wouldn't be supportive of sidewalks, because as we've said to many applicants, it doesn't matter what your property looks like, you can rationalize not paying. My neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks. I already have a sidewalk. I have a hill. You can absolutely rationalize away every single piece of property on that with a reasonably compelling argument. I get that, but again, I made the motion. It was set for the reasons I'd stated before, and it was seconded, and now we're open for discussion.
So, and I understand some people end up having to pay more than others, and that does seem unfair sometimes, but and it goes back to the Metro Council has not given us any limitation on, for example, you have to contribute into the fund, but only for 50 feet of frontage, and that's where I'm hung up on this. Is I feel like we're legislating more than looking at a hardship. So.
Well, and from my take on that is that a variance looks at things that are different, and if you can, and a hardship is something that's different, and it may be dramatic, like you have a creek running through your yard, or it might be a little more subtle to say, well, you have a larger than average lot, and you have other compelling things like your neighborhood support and your council member and NES electrical boxes in your yard, and That may be compelling to you, it may not be, but I mean, to me, for a variance, you're looking for something that's different from all the others, or different from the average, or different from however you wrap your head around different. So, but again, it's the reason that there, hopefully at some point 7 of us instead of 1, because then you're just stuck with a single point of view. And I value the differences of opinion here. So if there's no more comment, anybody want to say anything? If not, then we'll take a vote. The motion is a variance of 60 feet for the reasons stated. And all in favor, say aye, raise your hand. All opposed? That one fails 3-2. Are there any other thoughts other than letting that stand until next time and see if our current board member wants to take a review and add to that? Is that fine? Okay. All right. With no other motions, then that motion failed 3-2. We have one more board member that could hear that motion, and if she does that at the next meeting, we can have another vote and vote on that motion. And I guess that's where we leave it, right?
That's right. The appellant has 30 days to obtain 4 affirmative votes, so for lack of a better way to phrase it. After 30 days of this hearing, well, I guess would it be the last hearing since?
Well, this is the first motion, so it would be from this motion, wouldn't it?
And look at the rules, I believe, say within 30 days of the public hearing, the first public hearing would have been last meeting. Let me look and see.
But we just had another public hearing, didn't we?
It just says within 30 days of the public hearing. So we'll put it on the next meeting, 6/20. That'll definitely be within 30 days of the first public hearing. Obviously, it's within 30 days of this public hearing. Hopefully, Ms. Sanford will have an opportunity to vote, and if not, at that point, we'll have an answer at that point as to when the 30 days expires.
Great. Thank you, and good luck. All right, next case.
Next case is 2019-169 involving property at 2256 Cabin Hill Road. This is a request to construct an addition to an existing non-conforming duplex. Before you is the zoning map showing you the zoning of the property is RS-15. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the surrounding area. Site plan submitted by the applicant, and finally photographs showing you the current conditions of the property. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 169? Seeing none, the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your desired presentation. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address before speaking to the board.
Good afternoon. I've never done this before, sorry. My name's Kenny Mock, and I've just recently purchased some property, and I've bought the property because I've done something similar in Murfreesboro. We have renovated duplexes for the purpose of serving our community for those who have housing needs that are those who are handicapped, both seniors and younger folks. And we've done this in Murfreesboro. It was very successful about 2 years ago. And so in looking at in building out this duplex, the requirement is to have 80 square feet per person in the duplex. And on the one side at Cabin Hill, unlike the place in Murfreesboro, we had everything internally where we could find 80 square feet on both sides. We were not able to find 80 square feet on the other side of the duplex in Cabin Hill. So that required us to look at building.
How many people live in this?
There are 4 on one side and 4 on the other side, so it's a total of 8.
And so you're just adding one room?
Adding a couple of rooms and a restroom.
Okay.
So that's pretty much.
I mean, and I'll tell you that adding on, you're not asking for any variances for construction. It's just a non-conforming structure that is wanting an addition, and I know you submitted a site plan, but when we were reviewing this earlier, I couldn't tell what you were adding, and are you just adding that,
We're adding that,
the little
portion to
part
the
that's a
top-
little darker?
top right, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that's kind of what we thought, but it wasn't clear enough when we were looking at it to consider it for the consent agenda, because I really wasn't sure exactly what you were doing. So that, from this, that's why I wanted clarity.
Yes, sir.
Are there questions for the applicant?
For the only other facility that you have?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how long has that one been in operation?
It's been almost 3 years.
And you had a community meeting and had a lot of support, including with your councilman, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. On May 1st, I met with all the neighbors, and they were very encouraging, and we had 22 of all of them basically signed the agreement that they would like to see it happen in the neighborhood.
And will you be doing additional improvements in addition to the add-on portion?
Yes, ma'am.
Will the entire property have a facelift, or is this just an add-on?
It's
just an
an
add-on.
add-on.
Okay.
Yeah. And style is supposed to match the existing conditions.
This is Rodney Young. He's the person who did the plans.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? Do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm looking forward to helping our community.
Right. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Yeah, this is when we reviewed the consent agenda, it was, an item, it's just as a non-conforming use, and they have to come and ask permission to add on, and we weren't really totally clear exactly what the plan was, and now that we hear I guess from the neighbors and the councilman, and, we're not asking for any other variances other than just continue its use, bit bigger.
It's continued with the structure, the duplex is what makes it not.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think they're making it any more non-conforming than it already was. Based on
Right.
what's been told, there's a lot of support.
Yeah, I agree. So,
The council was in support, and it seems to be a benefit to the community based on who we heard from, and we don't have any opposition.
so is that a motion to approve the variance?
Motion to approve that.
We have a motion to approve the variance. We have a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Good luck.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Does anyone need a break before the next case? Quick break?
We'll take a 5-minute break.
All right, then we'll hear the next one.
Sidewalks are paying into the fund. Is the appellant here for this? Okay, you can go ahead and come forward to the table. Before you now is a zoning map showing the zoning of the property is R6. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the surrounding area. Site plan submitted by the appellant. And finally, photographs showing you the current conditions of the property. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 199? Yes, there is opposition here, so the appellant will have 10 minutes to make your desired presentation. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address before speaking to the board. One quick clarification, I believe the request is actually to build a driveway, a partial driveway, is that not right? All right, not to build, not to pay into the fund. Go ahead.
Hey, I was just going to ask, we've been getting a lot of feedback from the second microphone, and it makes it somewhat hard to hear. So if we could, if at all possible, use the first, third, and fourth, but maybe not use that second one. Thanks.
My name is Bailey Neal. I live at 5533 Kendall Drive, which is about a half a mile from this location. We're here today seeking a variance for the in lieu of or building the sidewalks. Did you pass? So we passed around the site plan as we have here. Really, the issue at hand is the grade as you get to the rear of the lot along Burgess. We have roughly 9 feet of fall over the last half of the lot. And so what will happen is when we build that sidewalk, you'll wind up with a roughly 7 to 8 foot retaining wall at the back. And that will be in Metro's road dedication, and Metro will be responsible for maintaining that retaining wall going forward. And so our discussions with Public Works were that they didn't really want to be in the business of maintaining retaining walls. And so it was recommended to us to seek a variance for that.
All right, and why did you not agree to the planning conditions of constructing along Orlando and paying along Burgess?
We felt like the building of the wall might be the cheaper of the two alternatives, but Metro did not want to maintain that wall.
Because your council person wants you to have to build, what her preference is that you be required to build along Burgess. It would be eminently cheaper to contribute to the in lieu of in front of for Burgess.
Well, I'm not sure it would be imminently cheaper than building it, but it would. I don't have that exact number, but we believe that building it could be the cheaper option, and that's what we would do. Therefore, Metro would be responsible for maintaining the wall going forward.
I believe she also said something about there being a retaining wall there, and I think
There is one at the back of the property that's grown over, and you can see about maybe a foot of it at best. So the site plan that we showed, if you look, there's a dark line that kind of comes about a couple feet off of the property line. That's our proposed retaining wall.
What page are you on?
Sorry, the second page, or the first large 11 by 17 page. So you can see it goes from, well, really like 493 elevation down to 482 at the back. The other thing, and the comment about the blind curve, is you can actually see on our site plan, that's because Metro's current row is grown out into the street. And so the proposed would be that we would need to correct all of that as well.
When you say road, do you mean right-of-way?
Right away, yeah. I mean, at one point, the grass is roughly 10 feet from the property line, 10 or 12.
So you're saying that Metro has to maintain the property, the wall because you're building it on
Metro's
their right of
property.
way, not on your property line? And why are you choosing to build it on Metro property instead of your property line?
Well, it winds up, based upon where we've been instructed that it goes, see, you can actually see the proposed sidewalk actually does not follow our property line. It follows where the road dedication is supposed to be.
Yeah, but I mean, is that retaining wall required to be so many inches from the sidewalk? Why can't the retaining wall be further from the sidewalk and along your property line?
If it was on it, would it not still be shared? I don't know the legal of that, but.
But that's
Yeah.
the basis of your argument is who's responsible. So, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so I mean.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah. Can you not see? Yeah.
Yeah. This was the recommendation of Public Works, was that we seek the variance because they felt it would be their responsibility to be maintained.
Do we have anything from Public Works?
Not about that.
Are there any other questions for the applicant at this time? Do you all have anything to add at this time? All right, you have 7 minutes and 46 seconds for rebuttal, and we'll hear from the opposition. All right, sir, if you could state your name, address, and tell us why you're opposed to this variance request. Yes, sir, press the button at the very bottom, red light on.
There we go. Yes, my name is Michael Penser. I live at 203 Orlando Avenue, so right next door to where the construction's being built. And I've been there for just over a year. You know, me and my partner, we bought 203 after moving, out of West Mead. You know, we wanted the character of an older neighborhood, so that's what we looked for when we were buying. Over that past year, of course, I've done a lot of work, out in the front yard, see all the neighbors coming and going. There's a lot of foot traffic, through there. Neighbors down towards Councilwoman Murphy's house, coming up to Burgess, cutting back towards Rural Avenue, down towards White Bridge. As she stated, there's a large apartment complex, back towards Burgess. You get a lot of foot traffic going down towards White Bridge. There's a bus stop directly on the corner of White Bridge and Burgess that does get utilized. I've got nothing bad to say about the developers. They've been more than willing to work with us on a shared fence. We've got separate issues as far as what their possible survey states as property lines. The setback, we're dealing with the 3-foot setback. To grant them more square footage to their house and their sale, which we had a pre-existing deck that's right up on it. I think that for safety concerns, because Burgess, Orlando, Rural, as White Bridge gets backed up from Charlotte Avenue all the way back to Burgess and beyond at some points with traffic waiting to get through that light, cars are coming and going. They're using Orlando and Burgess as a cut through over towards Charlotte to bypass the waiting with the foot traffic that goes through the neighborhoods, people jogging, walking their dogs. I've seen a couple of groups of preteen, teen kids walking quite possibly to the apartment complex back into the neighborhood. There's Big Picture High School, which is back on Rural Avenue. So I mean, we get a lot of traffic through there. A lot of people. There's things with development in Nashville. There's going to be a blend of the new and the old. Somehow all of this has to still mesh together. There's more and more development within the neighborhood. There's older homes. The values have been depreciated greatly, so developers are coming in knocking down the one, putting in two, you're increasing population within that small area. And so there's going to naturally be more foot traffic as well. And yeah, I think it'd be great to have a transit plan. I saw some of the old proposals as far as the tram going all the way up Charlotte, up towards White Bridge, and kind of ending there at one point. Of course, that's, well, who's to say when or if any of that would happen, but there's more and more people in the neighborhood, and we just, yeah, I think that there should be a sidewalk, most definitely down Burgess.
Any questions for the applicant? Is there anything else that you have to add? Hey, thank you for being here. All right, we'll hear from the applicant again with 7 minutes and 40 some odd seconds to rebut.
I don't really have anything to rebut. I'm not sure I 100% disagree. Maybe I would like to propose a middle ground, is that we would pay the in lieu of fee on the Orlando side. Is that something that is important to the neighborhood, but we maybe avoid the in lieu of fee on the Burgess side as a compromise?
Does that include you build on Burgess, or you just want to not pay on Burgess, but pay on Orlando?
Correct. The second.
Any other questions or comments? Anything else you'd like to add?
No,
all right.
thank you.
And we will close the public hearing.
I think traditionally we've tried to look at these variances. We don't have a lot of leeway with the legislation in place, but we have tried, particularly on corner lots, to give property owners a break. This is a single-family residence. I am a little torn between what planning has recommended and what Council Lady Murphy recommended, because I don't know what is the proper application there, but I'm not opposed to build on one side and pay in lieu on the other. I just don't know which side is more appropriate. That's my thought.
Well, that basically is planning's recommendation, and what the applicant said was it might be cheaper to build the Burgess side than to pay the in lieu on the Burgess side, which is frankly what the council lady wants. And so, I understood their testimony about Public Works, but we don't have any documentation on Public Works. And, at some point, if it's built, they'll just have to take care of it, and it's a sidewalk, and maybe they can, I don't know this.
I think it could be possible the retaining wall could be on the property owner's side.
Yeah.
I think the right-of-way dedication usually starts at the back of the curb. In this case, there'd be a retaining wall. I
Didn't understand that too. I thought, that was why I asked the question too, that, so, I guess.
So is that a motion, Mr. Chairman Taylor?
Well, I was going to, did you have something to say? I'm sorry. I keep looking this way and I don't want to ignore Ms. Davis, but my motion would be that we approve the variance with the conditions that are outlined by the planning department, that the applicant construct sidewalks along the Orlando side, that the applicant will either, and this is a modification to planning, contribute the in lieu fee on the Burgess side or build on the Burgess side, and that as part of that the right-of-way is dedicated. That they can choose to build or pay on the Burgess side, which that may ultimately end up being, it gives them the option to pay or build depending upon what they discover the cost to be, or what's is acceptable to them, but it gives them two options. So that's the motion.
I would second that.
Got a motion? Got a second? Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Good luck. Next case.
Next case is 2019-215, involving property at 3502 A, B, and C Ruland Place. This is an item A appeal challenging the issuance of 3 permits to build single-family homes on restored lots, or on lots that were restored, period. There is opposition present for this, so there will be 10 minutes for each side to make their presentation. Before you now is a zoning map showing you the zoning of the property is RS10. You can see these are the 3 lots. The one that's in red is the middle of the 3. It, I believe, was 1 lot that has now been restored into 3. Zoning, aerial photography showing you the surrounding area. And finally, photographs showing you the current conditions of the property. So each side will have 10 minutes. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address before speaking.
Are we
to the
working?
board.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Could we hear from the?
Sure.
Well, actually, if you would move to one of the other sides, because that second mic is the one that's causing static. We have these new.
I'm sorry.
No, you didn't know. We have these new systems up here, and apparently that middle mic is giving us static. We have a mic that lets us hear better, but not from that second mic. But I do think that we normally start with the zoning administrator. Is that okay? So we can understand the issues and why the decision was made, and then we can hear from council to say why they believe that that was not correct.
And the latter part of that is important, Mr. Chairman. You have 2 experienced and knowledgeable legal counsel representing the interested parties in this matter. They'll do a great job explaining their point of view with regard to the legal questions. Ultimately, for this item A case, the question really is, did the zoning administrator get the law wrong with regard to this project at the address formerly known as 3502 Ruland, presently showing as 3502 A, B, and C Ruland? The shortest version that I can give you, thus allowing more opportunity for the attorneys to make their cases, is this. State law allows the restoration of originally platted lot lines. In this case, the attorneys will explain to you and show you documentation that this land just off the Woodmont corridor was platted back in, I believe, 1935, as was much of this area of Green Hills, going down that corridor and even closer up toward Lipscomb. With regard to the lines that were divided at that time, I think the dimensions on those was 25 by 155, as shown here on the aerial zoning map that staff has put before you. As is the case with most of these scenarios, people bought multiple of those lots and combined them by deed and later legally built out homes to live on these 75 by 155 lots, or 50 by 155 lots, or 100 by 155 lots. In this case, 3502 Ruland was a 75 by 155 lot. The current zoning at that location requires 10,000 square feet minimum in order to comply with the zoning code. However, because state law allows the restoration of originally platted lot lines, which was done here, local law, namely 174670, which has to do with legally nonconforming lots, particularly vis-a-vis lot size, allows only single-family construction on those lots with the criteria explained therein in terms of legally created lot before the existing iteration of the zoning code that had the lot size restriction, and those lots must be a minimum by that local ordinance of 3,750 feet. The 25 by 150 would be that 3750 designation. 25 by 155, obviously just a shade beyond that. So, based upon the facts before us, based upon the state law, and based upon the local law, we issued the 3 building permits for construction of single-family houses on each of the restored lots, A, B, and C, at this location. It's probably worthy of note that this is consistent with the department's application of law in similar circumstances countywide, and exactly what we intend to do the next time one of these cases comes down the pike. Nevertheless, as I noted, both attorneys are experienced in land use and have presented you with briefs and exhibits with glorious degrees of detail that I trust you have consumed ardently in preparation for today's arguments. But I'll hand that off then to the board so that the parties can make their cases. Naturally, I'm happy to entertain any questions the board members may have.
Let me ask you one while it's fresh. So, in your decision, you had to interpret the phrase "legally created," correct? Do you think that's subject to various interpretations?
Ask the question again.
You had to interpret the phrase "legally created lots," correct?
Correct.
Do you agree or disagree that that is open to different interpretations?
A good lawyer can leave any question open to different interpretations, Mr. Pepper, as you and I would probably agree. In this instance, I did not regard it as a matter of question. We determined that the lots were in fact legally created, and the rest, meaning originally in 1935, and when combined by deed at a later date. And we also regarded that the restoration of those 1935 lot lines was also legal.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I guess I'm just curious, the houses that, the permits that were issued did not require any variances to us. I guess they didn't ask for any setback variances or anything like that. So they're building within the code for a 25-foot by 155-foot lot.
That's correct. And under, I previously referenced 17.40.670, that section of law dealing with legally non-conforming lots also has somewhat unique bulk regulations for the construction of the single-family houses. So absent any request for a variance, the full expectation is that the construction would follow those bulk regulations and every other stipulation of the zoning code. So no variances have been filed to my knowledge to date with regard to these projects.
Yeah, so there's not the potential of a self-imposed hardship here of buying a lot, splitting it into three, and then saying, I got a narrow lot, can't build on it. So that didn't happen here. They're following the code with their plans that got permitted.
Again, we'll let their attorneys outline that more specifically, but that is my understanding at this point.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I always appreciate having my legal work be called glorious by anyone. Thank you. We are appealing the issuance of the permit for demolition of the existing residence at 3502 Ruland and the issuance of building permits to create 3 new residences on that property. As Mr. Michael has pointed out, this neighborhood was created in 1935 by the Life and Casualty Insurance Company, who filed a development plan, not a plat, for the purpose of selling lots. And there were actually 287 25-foot lots shown on that plan. Ultimately, until very recently, when there have been some of these lots, these building sites, if you will, redeveloped, there were only 53 homes, if you will, out of those 287 lots. So on average, about 5 of these sales lots per building site, per lot in the modern sense. And of course, we do not argue that the recorded restrictions are binding on this board, but we included that reference in our briefing materials because the proposed restrictions require that the lot frontage of lots on Woodmont Boulevard be 75 feet. So that's at least 3 lots, and on the side streets, 50 feet. That's 2 lots, and therefore that's how the whole neighborhood. That's how the neighborhood developed that way. This was all before zoning, and this was all in Davidson County and not in the city of Nashville. But it was before the zoning and subdivision regulations had been passed. When they were finally passed, the zoning regulations required 10,000 square feet lots, which they do to this day. And the subdivision regulations required 50-foot wide lots. So in essence, no fewer than 2 of these historic, antiquated, I call them lots for sale. I think it's the most useful. For sale only and not for building. And setbacks of 30 feet and 15 feet on the side, 30 feet in the front. 3502 Ruland Place was purchased in 1940 and was made up of 3 lots. That was that was created by 3 of the sales lots, and then that building site was created by deed. So it was combined. All those lots were combined by deed into 1 lot for building purposes of a little over 11,000 square feet, a quarter acre essentially.
So does it come down to the difference between the building lot or what you're calling? And I think we need to. No, I agree. The terminology.
I think there are 2 different types of lots here. One is lots that were intended purely for sale, and I've called them antiquated lots, substandard lots. There's a lot of terminology, and there's cities around the country have tried to regulate this, but I think for the purpose of this discussion today, I'm just going to call them lots for sale only, and then lots that are subject to zoning restrictions, that are current zoning setback and zoning restrictions. We're going to call them building lots. just for sake of reference. And that would be what this lot, what 3502 Ruland became once 3 of the sales lots had been combined into a single site for building, which is a lot in the modern sense, 11,000 square foot lot, which complied with zoning and does to this day. That house, there was a house on that lot constructed in 1945, and it was compliant with the setbacks in the zoning regulations, which of course treated that site as a single lot because they're built across these internal lines of the sales lots, which in essence became irrelevant because that's how it was built.
Do you know if it was?
Yes.
I think currently you can't build across lots without combining them. Do you know when these were created, if that were the case too?
I think that was the 1940 deed. Is that?
1940 deed combined them. They were combined by deed.
1940 they were combined in the deed.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at, I understand in the materials that have been presented, I don't know if you presented them or someone else presented them, but that the restrictions on your combining the lots or whatever ended, I think, in 1955 or something like that.
It's not, there are no restrictions on combining the lots, but we think the covenants and restrictions expired actually in 1965. It's a very difficult to read document in the record, but even so, we're not arguing today that is binding on this board, you understand, simply, but at the time this area was developed, that was the intention of both the developer and the buyers, that you have at least lots of a certain size. Okay, so that is an important point, though. But as we attached an exhibit to our reply with some color pictures of some of the homes in this area, the Wimbledon and Waverly neighborhood, and the board can see how this entire neighborhood developed in this way. And anyone driving through there would say this is estate residential. You're talking about lots that are really 100, lots in the modern sense of 150 feet across. And so it's certainly not consistent with that character to have 3 3,750 square feet lots. The issue is the interpretation of the zoning ordinances. It always is in an item A appeal. And it's our contention that to make sense that the phrase legally created lots must necessarily refer to lots for building and not simply historic lots that were just part of somebody's sales plan, which is what they were. These lots that have been restored today were never intended as lots for building. It's interesting, it's under the rubric of non-conforming lot area, and as this board knows, non-conforming uses and non-conforming standards is a way under the zoning laws to protect a property owner from a change in zoning. So, as you know, if you had a commercial use and the area gets downzoned to residential, that commercial use can continue. Or if you have a certain standard like lot size, let's assume there's a lot size here had been increased to 15,000 square feet. Well, all these lots would have been non-conforming, but you wouldn't go kicking people out of their residences. So that's the reason you have a non-conforming use protection is to protect existing uses. Well, in this case, the 3502 ruling was compliant in every way, so it really wasn't. It was never non-conforming. It conformed with zoning from the time zoning was enacted. So there's really it's a misnomer. It's incorrect to talk about it being ruling being a non-conforming lot area. Therefore, at the time I guess it's conceivable if one of these side parts of that lot had been cut off and was now a 3,750 square foot lot back in the past for some reason, gave it to one of the children, who knows what, and they might have the benefit of this ordinance. But where you've got a lot that's still buildable, then what protection is the property owner of all 3 lots entitled to? I don't read this non-conforming lot area ordinance as allowing the further subdivision of a conforming lot into creating a nonconformity by Okay.
So I have a
Well,
question.
let me ask you, all right, so because this is a complicated situation, and now if they were to split, so the non-conforming lot, it's not a hardship. They're not asking for anything. I mean, they're not asking us to view a hardship, but they're also creating.
No,
you know,
they're not, but hardship is variance language, as you know.
Yeah.
The non-conforming lot, we're saying that 3502 ruling before they sought their building permits was not non-conforming to begin with. They created the non-conformity by asking it to be cut into 3 lots. And the ordinance, I don't read the ordinance. I don't think the ordinance can be read to permit that. And the reason you have a non-conforming protection of non-conforming uses and
So tell me why you don't believe
it doesn't say that. But I need to probably use my.
I'm asking as one of the.
Go ahead, please.
One of the 2 non-lawyers. So in way, it's not, and again, not asking to challenge, but asking to help me understand, or ultimately tell me what is what are your bullet points for me to think, or any of the board members to think about in terms of coming to a conclusion that the zoning administrator was not correct?
The legally created lot language, it means in the context a lot for building and a lot recognized for zoning purposes and not one created simply for sale 70 years ago. The reason you do that is that if you interpret it otherwise, you subvert the entire purpose of zoning. You've got, if you have to allow a density of development that's 3 times the existing density, and traffic, street parking, and all the impacts of that without a zoning hearing is contrary to the purpose of the zoning ordinance, period. It also is destructive of the character of the neighborhood, as the councilman pointed out, and as you can see from these pictures, how the neighborhood is developed. But as we urge again, this lot was not a non-conforming lot to begin with. So if it's non-conforming, it's not a non-conforming lot under zoning. Then the meaning of non-conformity is a zoning concept. So it's not a non-conforming lot. They have cut it up into 3 lots and said it's now entitled to protection of this non-conforming lot provision. And I don't believe that's correct. I don't know where I am on my time.
What they're attempting, if you need to save some time, I can hold the question.
Yeah, ask a question and then we
Don't worry about your time.
The 3 residences they're proposing to build, they would, as I understand it, they would not have been able to build those under the restrictions that were in effect until either 1955 or 65, correct?
Absolutely not.
Okay, and then by that time, am I correct that the zoning code had come into effect and would have also have prevented that?
1965 by our interpretation, Mr. Pepper, but yes, the zoning ordinance was in effect by 1940.
40, I think.
It would have, zoning ordinance would have prevented it, subdivision regulations would have prevented it, and the development that was created in that neighborhood was totally out of character by then with that, and that's more of a sort of a policy argument. But
so back in 1935, when this plat was filed, was there anything that, as I understand the materials I've read them, there was really no gatekeeper at that time. If you wanted to file a plat that had 110 by 10 feet by 10 feet lots, you could go down there and do that. Is that?
I would call it, that's why I call it a plan and not a plat, because a plat implies approval by the planning commission, which did not, I think the planning, some of these entities existed under the enabling legislation, but had not asserted jurisdiction yet. It's the way I read it historically. So, yes, to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how much time, I think the clock has stopped. I did want to let the board be aware, I have the named appellants in my brief. We represent a number of people who are directly and indirectly, and it would be all right if they stood and just be recognized. And they're not asking to speak.
Well, that's fine, but I also think that if you do need more time, that's something we can consider to allow both sides, because this is not the only neighborhood like this in town, and it's a complicated issue.
Right. So maybe at this time I'd like to have my clients stand up? Thank you. And happy to answer some questions, and certainly I'll be liberal with Mr. Murphy about time if we need time to answer questions.
I don't have a question at this moment. I probably will after. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. These are new microphones. We're getting used to them. I might have one after Mr. Murphy speaks, but
Sure.
for the record, I don't remember that you identified yourself.
Did I not? I'm sorry. My name is Doug Berry. I'm an attorney with Miller Martin Law Firm here in Nashville. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah. Are there any other questions at this point?
Okay.
All right, well, we will save time for rebuttal unless they need more time, and then we will add time to everybody.
This one is the one that works, right?
Yeah. It's not the second. One, all right.
Which way you count depends on whether it's the second.
Yeah, but you have to press the mic. There you go.
There you go, sorry. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Murphy with Bradley Air and Bolt Cummings, 1600 Division Street. I represent White Pines Building Group, the owner. A couple of things that I wanted to address about some of the discussion that Mr. Berry raised, and I'll get into more detail. I think the discussion has already occurred, but prior to subdivision regulation and zoning regulations, you created lots by recording a plat. And there was no subdivision requirement. You didn't have to go to the Planning Commission. You just recorded lots. There's lots all over Nashville that were recorded prior to the zoning regulations being adopted and the subdivision regulations being adopted. Those are all lots. And so for purposes of this discussion, I want to be clear that those were lots. Mr. Berry also mentioned the subdivision regulations and how when this lot was sold in 1940, the subdivision regulations required 50-foot wide lots. Well, these property weren't subject to the subdivision regulations because it had already been created before the adoption of the subdivision regulations. So there were no subdivision regulations that applied when this property was sold because the property had already been subdivided. They only applied to the subdivision of new property that hadn't been created as a lot. Mr. Berry struggles a lot trying to figure out how to define what these things are because there's no support in the zoning ordinance for his position. The zoning ordinance is clear. The zoning ordinance provides that if there was a legally created lot, and to create a lot legally in 1935, you recorded a plat. And that plat was recorded. So then the question becomes, did anything that happened after that change the status of those lots as legally created lots? And I'd like to pass out copies, and Doug, I have an extra copy for you. I'll give it to you. I cited this in my letter, but this is deja vu all over again for me, okay? I've actually litigated this case before for Metro back in the 80s when the issue was whether or not the deeding of lots that were inconsistent with the lot lines resulted in the change in the nature of those lots such that those lots could not be utilized for a duplex. And in that case, the Alexander case, which I've just passed out a copy, the owner, the lots had been sold off in an alignment that was different than the alignment shown on the plat. There were 3 60-foot lots shown on the plat, but one owner bought the middle owner bought 10 feet on each side of them so that you had a 50, then an 80, and then a 50. Under the zoning code that was in effect at that time, to build a duplex, if you had a lot that was created before 1983, you had to have 8,000 square feet, and if you had a lot that was created after 1983, you had to have 9,700 square feet to be able to build a duplex. So again, it's a situation where the lot area requirements for a duplex depended on whether or not the lot had been created prior to 1983. In that case, the 50-80-50 configuration was at one point in multiple ownerships, but eventually the same owner owned all three lots. They owned the 50-foot lot on one side, the 80-foot lot on the other, and the 50-foot lot on the other side. And all of that had occurred before the zoning ordinance had been adopted. And in that case, the issue that was presented as discussed, what the owner did the same thing here that my client is proposing.
Mr. Murphy, I read that case. And I mean, how do you, in that case, what the owner was attempting to do was build homes that would be in compliance with then existing zoning law.
No.
As I read that case.
Well, let me point out what the zoning ordinance said. The zoning ordinance said that if your lot was created after 1983, then you had to have 9,700 square feet. If your lot was created before 1983, you only had to have 8,000 square feet. The three lots that he wanted to build the duplexes on only had 8,000 square feet. So the issue in that case was, when was the lot created? When was the lot created? Okay. And the argument that the neighbors made in that case is the exact same argument that was made here, and that is by deeding the property inconsistent with the recorded subdivision plat, that somehow changed the nature of those lots, that transformed them from being 3 60-foot lots to a 50, 80, 50. And that was the argument, because if it was a 50, 80, 50, the two lots on the sides were not large enough to put a duplex on them. They had less than 8,000 square feet. They had less than 8,000 square feet in that configuration. And if you combined them, I mean, at the 60, 60, 60, they had 8,000 square feet.
Well, the way I read this opinion, doesn't mean I read it correctly.
Right.
But what I read it to say is that each lot would contain approximately 8,400 square feet of area.
Each of the 60-foot.
Each of the divided lots would contain 84 square feet of area.
Right.
And you had to have 8,000.
Under if the lot was created before 1983. And so what happened in that case was that the lot was in single ownership up until 1986. In 1986, the owner, the purchaser who bought it from the prior owner who bought all three lots, tore down the single-family residence that was on the middle lot and proposed to build a duplex on each of the 60-foot lots, not the 50, 80, 50, but on each of the 60-foot lots. The Board of Zoning Appeals upheld the zoning administrator who applied the rules just like this zoning administrator did and allowed 3 duplexes to be permitted.
I did not see the zoning ordinance that's at issue in this appeal cited anywhere in this case.
It's not cited, but if you go
the court says the determinative issue is whether conveyance of part of a lot shown on the recorded plat amounts to a re-subdivision, and that to me was the issue in the case. It didn't have anything to do with the ordinance we're here today about. And what it appears to me in that case, there was never an issue that what was being built complied with zoning. The issue was whether or not this re-subdivision was appropriate or not. And here, I mean, you would concede that under current zoning, what your client is attempting to do would not be allowed except for the non-conforming use statute, correct? obviously.
Yes, right. Under the non-conforming use provision in the zoning ordinance is what we're relying on to be able to construct these single-family residences.
And so, but going back to this, I mean, somebody could have in 1935 recorded it, and I don't think it was a plat either because there was no approval, there was no gatekeeper. You could have taken up a napkin with handwriting on it, and I assume the register of deeds would have recorded it. I mean, you could have then recorded as you call it, a plat with 10-foot by 10-foot lots. You could have taken 2 acres and divided it into 10-foot by 10-foot lots. And under your interpretation, well, you could always go back to those being lots. And you could develop, and then you're out of all the zoning regulations because originally somebody way back when recorded something with 10-foot by 10-foot lots. It seems to me to be not to be what that statute was aimed at. That statute was aimed for people who built something, and then before the zoning code was enacted, the zoning code would then prevent them if their house was demolished and they had to rebuild it from rebuilding. And it seems to me like you're trying to do the opposite.
Well, first, there's nothing in 174670 that discusses the requirement that there be any existing structure on the lots that are permitted to have a single-family residence on them under this provision. Secondly, the council has made the determination of what size of old lot can be utilized for the construction of a single-family residence. They have put in a 3,750 minimum. If your lot's smaller than that, then you're not protected by this. But the council has made that value judgment when they adopted this section. They made the value judgment that there's no requirement that you have an existing structure and that they're only protected if you're an existing structure. The language says if you have a lot that was legally created, okay, well, back in 1935, the only thing you had to do to legally create a lot is record a plat. That's what happened. Ever since that plat was recorded, every deed that has described the property has said lots 33, 32, 33, 34 on the Woodlawn Acres plan, the plan of Woodlawn Acres. That's typical of old subdivision plats. So the idea that somehow the plat, the lot is not legally created because it's not approved by the Planning Commission. There's lots of lots in Nashville that were not approved by the Planning Commission because they were recorded before the Planning Commission started to impose zoning regulations.
Well, I think their argument is the lot was not buildable. It was not legally created because it was not buildable.
There's nothing in this ordinance that says that it had to be a buildable lot prior to the application of this ordinance. When you read this provision, it says it was legally created, okay? It was legally created. There's no, Mr. Berry's made no arguments about why it's not legally created by filing a plat back in 1935, because that's how you created lots in 1935.
Well, I understand, but I think he's saying it legally created implies that it's a buildable lot. So if I would have bought one of these lots in 1940 with 25 feet of frontage, and I would have started to build a home on it, I think you would agree my actions would, in a sense, be illegal because somebody could have taken me to court based on the restrictions and said, because the restrictions required at least 75 feet of frontage. But when they created these, they had restrictions that said you can't build unless you have 75 feet of frontage. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think on the side lots it was 50 feet of frontage, and on Woodmont it was 75. But again, restrictive covenants are irrelevant for your purposes. You can't consider restrictive covenants for purposes of applying or interpreting the zoning ordinance. The council made the value judgment back when they adopted this ordinance, and interestingly, similar provisions have been in prior zoning ordinances. So it's not that this is a concept that's new.
But can't we consider the restrictions in determining what the word, quote, legally created means?
No.
I mean,
no.
Do we agree what's at issue here is the phrase legally created? Is that fair to say?
Well, obviously, the idea that the lot was legally created is something the ordinance requires. It had to be legally created.
So I understand I get your argument about we can't consider restrictions, but I think we can in terms of interpreting what they meant when they enacted the statute and used the words legally created. If I would have tried to build a home on one of these 25-foot lots in 1940, then the legal system would have stopped me from doing that. I mean, in a sense, that would not have been legal because I couldn't have done it. Somebody could have taken me to court. I understand there was no code at that time. I'm with you on that, but I think I hear you, but I think we're also allowed to consider the restrictions for purposes of interpreting this legally created language.
Well, again, whether or not there were land use restrictions are irrelevant for purposes of zoning. And so if you're going to make them relevant, you have to then assume that the council knew that there were restrictions on this property when they adopted this ordinance in 1998, and there's no basis for that. So again, the idea that you can say, well, obviously everyone knew that there were restrictions. Well, what's the basis for that? And that's why the courts have said private restrictions are not things that can be considered in adopting or regulating the use of property under zoning ordinances. That's what you're here for. You're here, this isn't an equitable court. This is a board that's supposed to determine whether the ordinance has been properly applied. Here, there is nothing in the ordinance that says that you can consider anything like whether or not you had to combine lots to be able to build them. That's not what the ordinance says. The only thing that the ordinance says you consider was it legally created, and it was legally created back in 1935 when the plat was recorded, because that's all you had to do at the time was record the plat. It says nothing in the ordinance that the lot had to be buildable. The council made the value judgment that any lot that was 3,750 square feet is buildable for a single-family residence, because there are lots all over Davidson County that are like that. They were adopted prior to the adoption of zoning ordinance. Some of them exceed 3,750, some of them are smaller. If they're smaller, you can't do this. But if it meets the 3,750, the council has made the decision that that lot can hold a single-family residence. And so that's the whole basis for the ordinance, is that recognizing that there are these lots. If the council wanted to impose a requirement that it also had to be buildable, or if the council wanted to say, well, lots that were platted but that were subject to restrictive covenants such that they couldn't be used unless you combined them, the council could have done that, but they did not. All they said was it was legally created, and those lots were legally created when the plat was recorded, because at that point, that was all that was required.
Could you sell them separately now? I mean, could with that house standing there as is, could you sell each of those independently created lots separately? I mean, could I buy 32 and you buy 33 and you buy 34 and keep that house sitting there?
You could, not with a single house there, but you could take the houses down, which is what our
but they're separate independent buildable lots. Why can I not sell an independent buildable lot?
There are several of those in that neighborhood where there are separate lots with a house on the middle of them. So that's, but again,
right. But part of your argument to me is, and help me understand why it's not, is that these are independent lots that I can build on, and if they're independent lots, then they should be able to be sold separately. Why not?
Well, I mean, you could, I guess, and allow the house to encroach on one of the other lots. There's nothing that would prevent that from occurring, but you'd have a house that encroaches on your lot. So practically, it could never happen, because no one would buy a part of a lot with a part of a house on it. But there's nothing that prevents that from occurring, because you're not subdividing a lot. again, that was the argument that was made in the
Right, and
Alexander case.
Well, I guess that's my thought on it too, is that, we're calling the collective a lot, and we're calling the individual pieces a lot. And any, for 70 years, anybody that walked down that street and you ask, tell me about that house's lot, where's the lot line? Well, you're going to say, well, it's probably somewhere in between that house and the house next door. And that's kind of where it is. And I bet not any of these neighbors knew that they were living on 3 lots or 4 lots or 5 lots until this kind of thing came about, because it didn't make common sense and it wasn't everyone's experience. And now and don't get me wrong, I understand that we've had the issue come up, and every single time there's something that absolutely doesn't feel right. And whether it's legally, and your point is, well, that doesn't matter, it's legally right, and I get that. And that's something we have to struggle with, sadly. It's not something I wanted to spend my Thursday on. But, it begs the question. I mean, if you call both, I mean, I guess all the pieces are lots, the collective is a lot. The other side has tried to distinguish between, a buildable lot versus a building block for sale to comprise a building lot, and yet Metro, in your case, argument, didn't distinguish. So I don't. That's why I ask. If they truly are independent, why can't you sell them independently, even though you have this weird issue of something spanning it?
Well, again, that's the same argument that was made in the Alexander case, and the court specifically said that deeding more than one lots did not change.
What size? You said those were each 60 feet?
Correct.
And did they replat it?
No.
They gave an easement of 10 feet, or how did they
just sold off 10 feet strips on each side.
And then,
again,
there was never any re-subdivision.
No.
In this case, I mean, this was just, all 3 of these lots were combined into one deed in 1940, right?
They were deeded as separate, as single lot. I mean, okay. The deed said lots 32, 33, and 34.
Okay, but unlike the Alexander case, there was no re-subdivision.
There was never a re-subdivision in the Alexander case. If you read the case carefully, what the court says, the plat was never amended. All the owners did was sell off 10 feet by description. I'm buying 108, I think was the middle lot. I bought 108 and 10 feet of 107 and 109. And so the court said that doesn't constitute a re-subdivision. And when Mr. Alsabrooks removed the house and elected to utilize the 3 60-foot lots, the court said that's not a re-subdivision. He's using the lots that were legally platted, or that were platted back prior to the adoption of subdivision regulations. I think in that case they were platted back in 1910. And the court said the fact that you convey them by deed does not change their nature of them being separate lots. And that's what's happening here. These are 3 separate lots. Obviously, you've got 3 different, you've got a single structure on 3 of them, so it wouldn't be, no one would buy a structure, a lot with a part of that, but with no structure on them, they become 3 single lots. And then the question is, has the council allowed you to be able to utilize those 3 lots? And the ordinance specifically permits it. So for that reason, the decision of the zoning administrator should be affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, and thank you for your materials.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Murphy, there's a question.
This Alexander case, though, is about lots that were zoned R zoning, not RS zoning like the case we have in front of us. And
Correct.
Also, this discusses duplexes. We're not discussing duplexes here.
No, but the issue is the issue in that case was whether or not by deeding lots differently than shown on the plat, that somehow that resulted in the lots that were shown on the original plat changing. And the court said it did not. It did not. So the duplex, non-duplex, the reason that the duplex issue is relevant in Alexander is because that lot was the 60-foot lots were non-conforming lots for duplexes. They were not eligible for duplexes under the current zoning unless the lots had been in existence prior to 1983. And because they had been platted in 1910 but had been deeded differently, the neighbors contended that those lots were not eligible for duplexes, 3 duplexes, because two of the lots were too small. And if you replatted them, which they contended occurred when the owner tore the house down and elected to utilize the 60-foot lots each for a duplex, they contended that that was, in effect, a re-subdivision because you were now, instead of having a 50-foot, 80-foot, and 50-foot lot, you are now having a 60, 60, 60. And the court said, no, that is not a replatting, that those lots were in existence as 60-foot lots from the time that they were recorded back in 1910, and there had never been any re-subdivision of the lots. They had not gone in and re-subdivided the lots. And so the court said that you can't re-subdivide lots by deed. And that's what this case is about. They're basically contending that by recording a deed for 3 lots, that somehow makes it a single lot. There are tools in zoning ordinances where that, in fact, can occur. But there's none in Nashville's zoning ordinance. Nashville's zoning ordinance does not provide that if you own contiguous lots, that they'll all be treated as a single lot. That's what would be required for this argument to be supportable under the zoning ordinance. But there is no support under the zoning ordinance for this argument.
Mr. Murphy, exactly that point is what I want to make sure I understand. I mean, you predicate your position on the fact that Metro made what you call a value judgment and said as long as a lot contains a certain amount of square footage, it can be a single lot. They could have made a different value judgment, in which case your argument may fail. Is that right? I mean, if they'd said it has to be bigger than your single lots, your argument would fail.
Well, if it had to be bigger than my single lots, then obviously I couldn't put a house on any lot that was not large enough, okay?
Even though it was legally created back before the zoning law and back before. Okay.
You're correct. There's two prongs to this test. Right. One is legally created. That's really all we've pretty much all we've talked about. But the other is the 3750 square feet. So the council required both. If you're less than 3750, then you're not going to be able to put a single family residence on that lot because that's not a permitted that's not permitted under the zoning ordinance. I'm not contending that the zoning ordinance doesn't have a minimum lot size. Mm-hmm. It does. And that minimum lot size was a decision made by the council. Another way the council could have done this was to say any lot that had been legally created prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance could, in fact, be utilized for a single-family residence. In fact, Davidson County zoning ordinance at one point said that any lot could be used. But in 1998, the council imposed a requirement that it be legally created and 3750 square feet.
Okay, and I understand the legal argument, I believe. And in speaking and going back to what Mr. Pepper was talking to you about, I guess, how do you answer, and maybe you say it's irrelevant, but the issue is this is a particular neighborhood, and it was built in a very particular way, a very certain way. And maybe you would agree, it seems a little unfair to the rest of the neighbors that this might occur. And let me just say, is the answer, well, they could do the same thing? Is that?
That's part of the answer.
That's part of the answer.
That's
What's the
part
rest of the answer?
It's been done right across the street, so that's part of the answer.
Right.
But the other part of the answer is, if the council said that for a non-conforming lot with a legally created lot with 3750 square feet, and there had to be some compatibility tests that you had to meet, the council could have done that, but they didn't. And so this board can impose additional requirements above and beyond what's contained in the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance says it has to be a legally created lot with 3750 square feet. These lots meet both tests, and so therefore the zoning administrator's decision was correct.
How would you address the argument that the purpose of the statute that you built your argument on was to protect existing owners of non-conforming lots rather than the creation of new lots? Because as I read it, and probably as the people who stood up on the first presentation, 3502 was one property, one lot, as they understood it, and now it'll be 3502A, B, and C, so that is the creation of new lots, which the statute may not have anticipated happening.
So what I would say is, purpose sections cannot be utilized in interpreting zoning ordinances that are clear. This zoning ordinance has two requirements. It's legally created and it'd be 3750 square feet. Those are the only two requirements. The ordinance is clear. There's no ambiguity about it.
Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry, but so I don't want to lose my train of thought. That begs the question to me, what does legally created mean? And in my understanding, your position is, since there was no gatekeeper back then, anything, if you went up there and filed something in 1935, ipso facto, it was legally created, end of story, all the way to 2075, whenever, today.
The lot that was created in 1935 remains a legal lot. And that's true in many, many, many places. So that, I mean, the fact that there was the legal requirement to create a lot at that time was to record the plat, and they recorded the plat, and they did that. That's all they were required to do at that point. And if the council intended for there to be additional requirements, like you had to have that the lot had to be compatible with the neighborhood, or that the lot had to meet other requirements, the council could have put those requirements in the ordinance. But at the time the lot was created, the only requirement was that it be, you recorded a plan with a plan or a plat with the Register of Deeds. That was the only requirement. So, after the subdivision regulations occurred, if you did something, just went in and recorded a plat without the Planning Commission's approval, and then tried to come in here and argue, oh, this lot was recorded and therefore I can rely on it, that wouldn't be a legally created lot, because at that point the Planning Commission approval was required to be able to record it. But that wasn't the case when these old lots were created. And again, the council didn't differentiate between lots that were created prior to the adoption of planning jurisdiction and lots that were not. It said legally created lots, and the legal description on this lot is lot 32, lot 33, and lot 34 on that plat. That's where the legal description for that lot comes from, is that plat. So to say that that's not a legally created lot, then what is the legal description for that property? Because that legal description is based entirely on the dimensions shown on that plat.
The ordinance that we're looking at, non-conforming lot areas, you've been talking about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's saying that any lot that has 3,750 square feet can have a single-family home on it.
Correct.
Okay. So why bother to have table 1712 020A for single-family and two-family dwellings, which outlines a whole bunch of RS zoning designations, RS 80, RS 10, RS 7.5? Why not just have RS zoning? If anything, any lot in Nashville over that certain amount of square foot can be built with a single-family home.
So the RS zoning is designed to prevent duplexes, okay? Currently, you could put it.
I understand that, but there's different, regulation. I mean, RS.
Right. Well, I mean, again, this was designed as a mechanism to deal with lots that had been platted before, before the subdivision regulations, before the zoning ordinances came in, and provide a relief valve for those ordinances to be able, those lots to be able to be used for single-family residence, not duplexes. So, unlike on a lot that's created today in an R district where you could put 2 dwellings on it, you can only put a single dwelling on each lot.
Yeah, I understand that point. I understand that point quite a bit, but why not? I mean, if Metro didn't intend to have these protections, greater setbacks in maybe RS10 district, which is what we're talking about now, why wouldn't Metro just change all these zoning designations, take out the RS10, the RS5, the RS7.5? Why wouldn't Metro just change it to RS zoning and go with this?
Again,
go with this non-conforming lot size for everything.
That's a question you'll have to ask the council. But again, if you look at the language of 1740-670, it says a lot that contains less than the minimum lot area required by table 1712-020A, 1712-020B, C, or D. So it specifically contemplates that the lot is going to have less lot area than shown on the table. I mean, that's what the ordinance says. That's a prerequisite for this section to apply, is that it has to have less lot area than is required. So the argument that, you couldn't have intended to have a lot that's smaller than the current zoning permits, that's what this language specifically says, is if you've got a lot that has less lot area than is specifically permitted in the tables, this rule applies. This rule says if you've got a legally cleared lot and you have 3750 square feet, you can put a single-family residence. You can't put a duplex, but you can put a single-family residence on that lot. So your primary task in interpreting an ordinance is to read the language of the ordinance, and if it's clear, applied. So that issue is addressed. It clearly says you can have a lot that's smaller than the minimum lot area. That's not a question from the standpoint of whether this ordinance intended to allow lots smaller than the minimum lot area, because it specifically says it. It contains less than the minimum lot area required by table 1712-020A. So clearly, that's what the council intended when they adopted the ordinance. If you don't like the ordinance, the remedy is not to come to the Board of Zoning Appeals. The remedy is to go to the council and have the ordinance changed.
Council intend to protect people that had non-conforming uses from the zoning code, and not the very opposite, which is what is happening here, which is to allow people to take what is a conforming use and turn it into a non-conforming use. I mean, I just can't believe that. I understand your literal interpretation of the statute, but the result it brings about, I can't imagine that and I'm even relying on the case that you cited to us. The court talks about the purpose of with greater frontage and area requirement, when greater frontage and area requirements were superimposed upon this pattern, meaning that before we had zoning, many owners were left with substandard lots. Strict and literal enforcement of the more stringent regulations would have made such lots useless to their owners and to the community. And this is just not a situation in which someone had a lot and now it is useless because of the zoning code. It's just really the opposite. They're trying to take the zoning code to make something that probably more valuable than it was beforehand.
So there are provisions in the zoning code that deal with non-conforming uses and non-conforming structures, and then there's a separate provision that deals with non-conforming lots. And you can't say, well, we want to apply the requirements for a nonconforming use or a nonconforming structure or a requirement on a nonconforming lot that's not in the zoning code. And despite, I mean,
I'm sorry. Okay, so are you referring to, I know 17.40.670 is.
deals with
what you're
nonconforming lot area.
Right.
That's all it deals with. Nonconforming lot area.
Okay.
That's the requirements that are applicable here. The requirements for a nonconforming use, which is what, 1740, 630, or it's earlier in the code, those aren't applicable here. This is a nonconforming lot area issue only. That's the only thing we're talking about. So the fact that you've got a nonconforming use, there are other rules that apply to those. That's not this case. And to go back to the point that you made from the Alexander case, the court said that, but the court then said, we're going to find that those lots that were platted originally back as 60-foot lots were never replatted. And therefore, the owner can put a duplex on each of those lots, even though under the current zoning ordinance, he would need 9,700 square feet, not 8,000 square feet. That's the difference. It was a non-conform, those duplexes did not comply with the zoning ordinance at the time if those lots were not legally created before the effective date of the zoning ordinance. The trial court had held that when the owner tore down the house and elected to utilize those 3 60-foot lots for the duplexes, that was in effect creating a new lot in 1986, which was after the 1983 deadline, and so therefore those duplexes could not be built. The Court of Appeals reversed that decision, finding that in fact, no, those lots had not been created in 1986. They predated the ordinance, the 1983 deadline in the ordinance, and therefore they could be utilized for a duplex even though they had 80,000 square feet and not 9,400 square feet. So it is exactly the same pattern. It's the exact same application of the law. You had a situation where the owners or the neighbors were claiming that by deeding property differently than shown on the plat, that somehow changed the nature of those lots. The court said, no, those are still legally created lots. They've never been changed by a re-subdivision.
I don't see anywhere where the court cited the statute or used the words legal, that they said they were legally created lots. I don't see that anywhere. Can you show me
The terminology legally created lots was not the same. The ordinance at that point said that, and it's found on page 2 of the opinion.
Okay.
With the paragraph beginning in 1986. In 1986, Mr. Alsabrook, the applicant, proposed to buy the 3 lots, demolish the house, and build a duplex on each lot. With 60 foot of frontage on the left circle, each lot would contain approximately 8,400 square feet of area. Under the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the metropolitan government, a duplex could be built in an R8 district on any lot originally established prior to October of 1983. So the language, again, is a little bit differently, but I think the actual language was a lot that was in existence on or before October 1, 1983. So the language wasn't exactly the same, but it conferred the same context, which is the lot had to be established, it had to be a lot before that 1983 deadline. And the only way for it to be a lot was in 1910, the only way to create a lot was to record a plat showing a lot, and that's what had happened.
Okay. Any other questions? Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're time for rebuttal, and definitely know that on cases like this, I would prefer to err on making sure that everybody has their question answered. And of course, when this board asks questions, it doesn't count against time. So I'll ask you a question to not count against your time, and to respond to the some of the specific points, and know that that we certainly have a lot of other cases. We want to do this as quickly as we can, but we want to do it thoroughly, and so we will be liberal in terms of your need to.
I don't ask that you be liberal on that. I'll try to answer the questions and not make a speech. On Alexander, 4 points, and they're lawyerly points. One is it's an unpublished 40-year-old Court of Appeals decision, limited precedential value. Second, the sole issue in the case was whether the conveyance of a part of the lot showed on a recorded plat amounts to a subdivision, re-subdivision. That's not an issue in this case. So all the other things that are said in that case are what's called dicta. They're talking about the law, but it doesn't really apply. It doesn't bind this board or apply in this case. However, it's interesting that in that case, the court talked about if the owner of one of the substandard lots owned a single lot, they might be entitled to relief. Then it says, if the owner of such a lot owns another lot adjacent to it, he is not entitled to the exception. Rather, he must combine the two lots to form one, which will meet or more or less closely approximate the frontage and area requirements of the ordinance. So that was citing this authoritative zoning treatise called Anderson on zoning.
So is that the kind of that goes to your argument that if you buy 3 adjoining lots and they are conforming, you can't subdivide them to become non-conforming?
That's my opinion. That they created created the nonconformity. If let's say way back when, who knows, somebody had deeded or willed to some child a portion of one of these 7 or 8 lots, building lots, then that person might have the right to take advantage of the provision in the zoning ordinance. But it does not state that someone can come in and create a non-conforming lot by re-subdividing it without going through rezoning, without going through any public input, without going through public hearing, without going through re-subdivision, anything. Just do this anywhere in the city where there's one of these, I'll think of them as ghost lots out there that nobody knew about. The second point is, I don't understand how, if someone can create a lot, a purely private action, go record something in the registrar's office and call it a plan or a plat, why restrictive covenants then are not relevant to the same point. You've got, in this case, when this plan was created, the person who recorded that plan, the life and casualty insurance company, they didn't intend for 25-foot wide lots to be building lots. By restrictive covenants, they intended that at least 50-foot wide lots would be created. And then subsequently, by further private action, people purchased these lots by deed and bought 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, or 7 of them. All those legal actions, they created the real legal lots, and it became the lots in the zoning sense that were buildable lots, to which the setbacks applied. And when this house was built, they built over any purported setbacks of the antiquated so that those internal setbacks were irrelevant. So clearly, they were moving it into the modern sense, if you will, of the word, what is a legally created lot. By deed, so it was created by deed. And I dare say it would take a Herculean task to come through all the minutes of the Board of Zoning Appeals over the years on these substandard lots around the city. But I dare say that you wouldn't be, if you had to consider various setback variances, for example, you wouldn't have been asked to consider the internal setbacks which might have been created by these these substandard lots. You would have looked at the setbacks in the normal sense of the word. I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah. I have no other argument to make.
I mean, Mr. Murphy's argument is that legally created means that if it was legal to go record something with the Register of Deeds in 1935, that is that meets the definition of legally created.
Well, I think I've sort of, Mr. Pepper, I think I addressed that maybe in my first part of my rebuttal argument just now. So I don't think that could possibly mean, that'd be meaningless. You could record a 20-foot wide, I don't know, spite strip for something, and all of a sudden that's a buildable lot?
Do you know if,
But I guess he's also saying that if the council meant something more than legally created, that they would have put that in there. They would have said it requires.
Pardon me. I think the statute the ordinance is ambiguous on that point because it doesn't say, and I think you do and should interpret it in light of the purposes and zoning of the zoning ordinance. And one of those purposes is you do not destroy stable neighborhoods without going through a zoning. Well, if you don't destroy stable neighborhoods, hopefully ever. But think about this. Without any rezoning, without any public hearing, without any plat revision process, someone can come in and buy what appears to be a 1-acre lot and cover it up with 25-foot wide lots, and there's nothing you can do. Think about that. This is a matter of interpretation. How could you interpret the zoning ordinance that way? Is that what the Metro Council intended? So I would say they couldn't have intended that.
But, and I don't necessarily disagree, but everyone has the ability to do that. So none of the other landowners are precluded from doing the same thing. They may choose not to do that, but they could use their property in the same way.
That's true, but monetizing your investment is not a goal of the zoning ordinance.
I
and many people prefer to have their land like it is and are content not to re-subdivide it and get the most out of it.
And so tell me, so you think the ordinance is ambiguous because clearly it wouldn't have been the intent of Metro, or it shouldn't have been the intent of Metro?
I think it's, I'm trying to think if ambiguous is the word or vague or just incomplete. It seems like to me it doesn't answer the question as to what is meant by lots. And there's no indication that, and these substandard historic lots, and that's a pretty exotic creature. You'd think somebody would have said, because I can tell you, I've done a lot of real estate work in my life, and transactional and zoning. And I'm not sure this is something people are born knowing, that there's these hidden lots out there. People who do a lot of this. So why wouldn't you make and that's what cities around the country have done. And most of them, this excerpt from Anderson on zoning, which is in the Alexander case, talk about how that will be dealt with. And usually it's in either a variance type process, or you make somebody who combine the lots if they own two. There's a hardship if you just own one. And there's nothing in this process, there's nothing in the Metro ordinance that would suggest that there's been that kind of thought given to this problem. And maybe that's a weakness of the argument, I don't know, but it just dumbfounds me to think that the council would not have considered that when you have, if this is a citywide issue, and it very possibly is in the older section of the town, why they wouldn't have said these lots that were created before planning commission jurisdiction are to be treated as follows, and then the following rules on that. I would suggest that the more likely, the explanation which is more consonant with good zoning and good planning is to say you're talking about building lots and zoning lots, lots for the purposes of zoning.
So, they're saying, okay, this is really 3 lots. I can buy that one address and take it back to the 3 lots. Could you then combine 2 of them? Could you build a house on 2? And I guess, at what point, if you took it back to its original lots, then does it have to just be 3 lots, or can it be a 25-foot lot and a 50-foot lot? Or if I took them back to their original lots, then I bought the house above it and I own 31 and 32, but could I combine 31 and 32 if both of them went back? I mean, I guess that's the question, is at
Kinda
what
lost me
point
there.
do.
Kind of lost me there, Mr. Taylor.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I mean, it sounds like I guess they're being described as lots, and you're saying building lots, which makes me think of like building blocks. You know, you got
Yeah.
three little blocks that have one house on it, and then the next house has three little lots and has one house on it.
I think the easiest way to look at them is lots that are for sale
No,
only and lots for building. That's how I keep it straight in my mind.
No, I understand that, but I guess I'm saying if you can take it back to its original 3 building blocks instead of 1, and the next house has 3 building blocks instead of 1, now you got 6 building blocks. Well, can you not combine them 2, 2, 2? I mean, it just seems like all of a sudden it becomes a little kind of nuts.
It may have been pretty nutty back there in 1935.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess I'm
LNC got to do what they wanted to do. I know that.
Well, and I mean, I understand the argument, and you know, nothing about it seems fair, but I understand we're trying to deal with the legal aspect of it, and I know that's how Metro approached it, and yet it's a real tough one for us to have to struggle with, and it's a hard question. That wasn't a question, but are there other questions?
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Murphy, Mr. Berry. Your materials were very thorough and very clear, and it is a tough issue, but y'all both did a good job of laying it out for us, so thank you.
Well, I know you both did a good job, since it still feels muddy, right?
Or we're still friends, I think.
Thank you. All right, well, we will close the public hearing and have discussion. And I would appreciate my lawyer friends telling me what they think, because this non-lawyer is not so sure.
Well, the reason I wanted to, the reason I asked Mr. Michael if he believed that there was differing interpretations of legally created, because I think there are, and I think we've established that, and I think that Mr. Berry's position is that legally created meant it not legally created small slivers to be sold, but it had to be something somebody would build on, and that's what I just can't believe that the Metro Council would have intended the result that would happen here if we uphold the zoning administrator's decision, which is exactly retrograde of what they were trying to prevent. They were trying to prevent someone who bought a buildable lot and built on it, and then you had the zoning code come in. It was to prevent them from essentially forfeiting the value of their land because they couldn't do anything with it, and so that's my view of it. I think that the literal strict interpretation of legally created, yeah, there was nothing illegal about going and recording whatever kind of plat you wanted to record in 1935, but I think the phrase, quote, legally created was not limited to that and was not intended to be limited to that. And I think the court in the Alexander case speaks to that, as to the purpose of trying to enact laws to protect people who bought and built before the zoning code was enacted.
Well, and I mean, they were certainly treated as one lot once they were combined, and I guess that's where I've always had when this board has considered this type of issue before, struggled with, and I think the point about the easements or the variance, you know, you didn't ask for a variance for that middle lot to, you know, or really all 3 to build on the side setbacks of what, you know, you treated it as one. And I also understand the neighbors and the council members' perspective on the changing nature of what this would do to the neighborhood, and yet, you know, struggling with, well, how is that? Is that our question? But what, I mean, did you have an opinion on, you know, is this the right interpretation or not?
I don't think it's the right interpretation. I think the zoning administrator erred. I think that there are different interpretations. I just don't think the Metro Council intended the literal interpretation of whatever you recorded back in 1935 if it was legal to do it when there was no gatekeeper. I just don't think that's the interpretation that is the appropriate interpretation.
I want to throw into that, though, first of all, I don't, it seems like we're doing an interpretation if we find the zoning administrator erred. This is the manner in which these cases have been handled in other instances in the county. And there were two issues. It's not just whether it was how you interpret legally created to me, I'm just talking out loud, but it also had to do with the lot size. And it would fail, certainly, if we didn't have both of those provisions. There are a lot of parcels in the county, I believe, that this wouldn't be the outcome that occurs. I don't think that makes it fair or right, but I'm not sure I can find the zoning administrator erred as a result of that. But I would love to be convinced otherwise, because clearly the neighborhood is going to be detrimentally impacted. I mean, I don't see any other outcome than that.
Well, I think that there were, as Mr. Michael acknowledged, there were different interpretations, and I think it's appropriate for us to conclude that the interpretation that the zoning administrator adopted was not the correct interpretation based on the outcome and all of the facts. I'm comfortable with that in terms of, I think we have it is our place and we have the authority if we think we're not changing the law here, we're just saying that the zoning administrator of the different interpretations that could have been taken, we believe the wrong interpretation was taken.
What do you think?
Well, a couple of things. One is that the zoning code, and I'm reading it in the zoning code in the introduction, is intended to protect the properties. It says Title 17 further establishes development standards which are designed to protect the value and integrity of neighboring properties, and it goes on. And so I don't think, as my colleague here says, that council intended for a 3,700 or 3,750 square foot lot to have these single family homes and not, I mean, essentially you'd be doing away with everything that is in this chart for single family and happens to have two family dwellings. All these protections that are in place in the bulk standards or the bulk regulations. This non-conforming lot area ordinance is, I think, really just intended to allow substandard lots, which there are some substandard lots that, I mean, we've seen them before where they've been made smaller because maybe TDOT takes some of their property, and so I think it's intended for those type of lots, not just any lot, any of these lots for sale, as Mr. Berry calls them, to be developed on. I mean, then a lot of Nashville has these small 25-foot lots. I don't think that was the intention of council, to just allow these to be built with these small single-family homes in these well-established neighborhoods. And essentially, what they're doing is they're going from this, and he's said it many times, they're going from this approximately 11,000 square foot lot that's conforming and dividing it up into these smaller lots. I mean, that's really what's happening here, and I just don't think that was the intent.
I don't like the outcome either, but the lots all maintained, the deeds also list these as separate parcels. I mean, you do a lot of real estate. I mean, does that not put you on notice, no matter what the...
I think that if you interpret legally created literally, I don't think the zoning administrator erred. I mean,
Right.
I think if it's all about, is this a literal interpretation?
Right.
I just don't think in the law, you're not always required to interpret things literally. If it's obvious something should not be interpreted literally, then you shouldn't do that. And if you look at all the facts and, the development of the zoning code and what they were trying to protect with this non-conforming statute, it just doesn't, make sense that the council would have intended this to be used for the purpose it's being used. And
You
that's
mean the non-conforming lot size?
the non-conforming lot
ordinance.
size, correct.
What do you think?
Well, we've had, I think, this issue before, and this is the first time that it has maybe had as vigorous an opposition, argument. And and this board's composition is different, and that's a different take. I mean, it's definitely one I want to convince myself of, because I think that because of the reasons you said, that what I believe to be the intent of the way that neighborhood was created, and, these homes have been there 70, 80 years, some. And so, I like the case that you're making, and knowing that it's not, it may not be necessarily, the error is in a difference of interpretation, not the legitimacy of the interpretation. That, that may be for another body to ultimately debate. But if somebody may carry this on, this argument past our board, and it will come down to the same question, is which of the interpretations is correct. But I do like where your thought is going.
I'm also inclined to agree with Mr. Pepper. The argument that I found the most compelling was that the statute or the ordinance was not created to sort of permit this sort of thing. I felt like it was used to protect existing homeowners who had substandard lots. And then also, the commissioner, I also think, had a compelling argument. RS10 is a single-family zoning that sort of intends sort of low density. To allow this sort of like redivision of those lots, even though they're existing parcels, sort of contravenes like the underlying zoning, which is RS10, which is a lower density than anyone else in this neighborhood has. And so, this type of redivision would allow for a higher intensity than anyone else in the neighborhood currently has. And so, I know that I thought the legal argument was good, the two-pronged test. I don't know if that was the purpose of, I don't think the purpose is that clear. And if we read the entire zoning law together in concert, I don't think it would permit this. So that's what I think.
Is there a motion?
Sorry. Yeah, I would move. I would move that to make a motion that the zoning administrator erred in the issuance of the permits.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there further discussion? We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? It passes 4-1. All right. And if we can take a, all right. If we can take a quick break and get back to it.
Announcement, case 2019-229 for property at 1212 Katy Avenue. The appellant has deferred that case to June 20th. And the next case, as you said, we'll hear out of order is case 2019-245. And this is on property at 6136 Mount Pisgah Road. They're requesting a variance from setback requirements in order to construct a single-family residence. Before you is the zoning map showing the zoning of the property as RS10. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the surrounding area. Site plan for this property is submitted by the appellant. And finally, photographs showing you the current conditions of the property. The request is the front setback per the average that's required would be 53 feet, and the appellant is requesting a 30-foot setback. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 245? Seeing none, the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your desired presentation. Please make sure to identify yourself by name and address, and of course, Councilman Swope, you can speak as long as you need to address the board.
Thank you. Chairman Taylor, members of the board, thank you again for your service. I know other fellow council members have done that, and I will continue to do that, especially after cases like you've just heard. I promise you I'm not a lawyer, and this is a whole lot simpler than what we just went through. And I also appreciate you taking this out of order so that I can get to budget hearings and have a different argument. The appellant, Ms. Chapman, here has 4 lots, 2 on the north side of the road, 2 on the south side of the road. She's developing them herself. She lives in the district, what, a half a mile away? No, okay, a quarter mile away, behind. When planning and zoning first did this plat, when the plats were filed, there was recommended 40-foot setbacks on the front on both sides of the street. As she started to build through these lots, what has become evident is there will be a stormwater issue on the back side of this lot should that 40-foot setback stay in place. If they move the house 10 feet forward and change that to a 30-foot, that's the variance that's being requested today.
Is it a 53-foot setback requirement or a 40?
40.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're essentially asking for a 10-foot variance.
Okay, because of the materials I have,
I can answer that.
say,
That is an average of what is out there, the 50-something,
Here.
the 40.
okay, but it says the
average is what is required, so it's going to be, so in this particular case, the average of the 4 adjacent properties is 53, and so therefore it's a 53-foot.
required setback.
That's right.
Okay, so it's 53, not 40. That's
I'm
what I
sorry.
was confused
But the
about.
one right next to it, they had me do it 40.
Okay, but applicable to this lot is a 53.
That's right. The way the
It's
zoning
50, okay.
code reads, it takes the average of the adjacent properties. So although the one next to it might be 40, the one 2 over might be 60. And I don't do math, but you get to 53 is the average of the 4.
Again, my apologies.
And ma'am, can you tell me the one that's next to it that you said was 40, is that in area, well, I'm sorry, can you bring, I'm looking at the map on my.
That's up there.
Can you go back one slide?
Yeah, well,
2
even
slides.
back,
Another one.
that one, is it number
Okay.
2?
It is.
Number 2 is the one that's 40, and so
they
it has a much,
granted me 40, like,
okay. The one which has a much deeper lot, and number 1 doesn't, okay. So,
it's very
but-
shallow, and it's critical, and the water just pours down there, and what I'm after.
And that was
is
one of the things that wasn't clear in the, when we were reviewing it, and I think we had proposed, maybe could you, maybe, I think to get on the consent agenda, I think we said, well, hey, could you split the difference? And it wasn't clear that there was water issues in the back when we were talking about that. It was really more to try to be more contextually appropriate, but with the water issues, I understand that.
The water issue is huge, and the 10 feet would allow me to put a big berm back there all the way down that would control the water, and that's the goal.
Any other questions?
What does the water issue come from?
Okay, so it's a really, you can't tell it by that, but it's a critical lot, okay? It's very, very steep, okay? There's well, in the first house, which it goes deeper, the house is closer towards the front, but it's 14 feet of fall between the front and the rear of the house, okay? On the long lot, okay? So that's just an example of the fall. And the lot, and the amount of fall on the little lot, which is the one we're talking about, is a similar amount of fall. There are 4 houses that back up to it, and they go like this, okay? That is to say, they're built up here, and the water goes this way. This goes like this. The water catches in the back of all those lots right now, in spite of the fact that, well, it doesn't matter why, it does. And so the person on the lower side, which is me, is left to control the water for all those houses, including the one on the other side. And if I'm allowed to put a berm in there, and I'll have to have some swales too, but the point is that it takes width. It takes width to do it.
How much, because you're requesting,
I'm asking for 10 feet.
well, but, okay, that's where
Well, actually,
Reading
I
is
think
53
we've just
is
found
perfect.
out now it's going to be a 23 feet ask?
Yeah, I think it's, by my math, it's a 23-foot variance
then-
request. So how much do you need for the berm?
About 10 or 12 feet.
Okay, so
And they-
could you then go from 53 to 43? Would that work if you need 10, or could you?
I don't think that's enough.
It's not near enough.
Yeah, it's a very unique building lot, and I might add, these are, $5,600,000 single-family homes that are very conducive to the neighborhood. And again, Ms. Chapman lives in the neighborhood.
It becomes
So
very, very shallow, very, very quickly.
if it were a 30-foot setback, and I've had this conversation with Stormwater, then Stormwater has a plan to take care of all the water on the backside of the lot. But anything less than that really creates building problems.
So stormwater is essentially, they came up with a 30-foot number,
Yeah,
not?
yeah, and there's nothing in writing about
Okay,
that. This has kind of been off-book, just conversations.
I
but-
understand. We understand. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Pepper.
Any other questions? Yeah, ma'am, could you state your name and address just for the record?
My name is Christina Chapman. I live at, I'm kind of nervous up here.
It's okay.
I can't think of my own darn address. I live on Brentwood Knoll Court, right behind there. 2816.
All right. Thank you. All right, did you all have anything else to add?
No, sir.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. And, when Emily and I were reviewing the consent agenda, it was clear that this lot was very different than the other lots that even go around. And that was, and I did, Ross, exactly what you'd said. I said, well, what if they split the difference and did 40? And I said, well, offer them that if it'll go on consent and we don't need to hear it. And, but just because of the shape of the lot. And they said, no, we need, you heard what they said, and because of the water issues. And I'm inclined to grant the variance for those reasons.
I think particularly since Metro Agency has essentially said you got to have 30 feet,
Right.
so.
And I think, right, so I'll move that we grant the setback variance to 30 feet. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is case 2019-239.
Case 239, present.
This is property at 519 Landon Drive, requesting a variance from setback requirements to construct a detached accessory unit. Before you is a zoning map showing you the zoning of the property is RS20. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the surrounding area. Site plan submitted by the appellant before you now, and finally photograph showing you the current conditions of the property. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 239? Seeing none, the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address before speaking to the board.
Thank you, Board. My name is Frank Fiss. I'm a 20-year resident of the house on 519 Landon Drive. My mic's not on. Okay. Again, I'm Frank Fiss, a resident at 519 Landon Drive. We've been in the house for 20 years, and we'd like to put a garage in the back. And if you maybe could scroll back to that image where the driveway is shown in the, or if that one or the aerial is fine. It's a very tight, to go in reverse with a trailer into that backyard, you have to keep it straight. We'd like to set a garage in place where you can go straight back into the trailer. So the driveway is already on the property line, so we want to get that garage as close to the property line to be able to go back. Otherwise, you got to cut the wheel and you can't, there's no room to do it. So that's why we're interested in getting so close. The other reason is that we already have a large concrete pad there. If we have to move, if we put it further away from the property line, we'll have to add more impervious concrete, and we know that can be an issue. We're sensitive to that. So those are the two reasons why we're asking for the setback.
And what kind of trailer are you talking about?
Just small boat trailer.
I was trying to look and see, have you talked to your neighbor?
I have, yeah.
And what does the neighbor say?
He understands the concern. He's been with me there for 20 years as well, and he was okay with it. He understands that we would be able to put a garage in at 5 feet anyway, so it's a matter of, from his point of view, it'd be a matter of looking at the structure. It's like, well, if it's 5 feet away or 2 feet away. The bigger issue is that my architect drew it as if it was a 10-foot variance. So we really felt like we needed to submit a waiver at that time. Right now, if it's 5, I don't even know that I want to use the whole the whole extra 3 that we might be able to get, if that makes sense. So basically, our architect is recommending 2 to get the maximum alignment with the driveway. So I should leave it at that.
Okay.
If you did not receive this variance, would you still be able to build a functional
I would hope
garage?
so. Yeah. Again, I hired the architect to try to get the best use of the land, and if the setback is 10 feet, then I can't. I've tried to back work trailers in there before. I can't do it.
What if it's 5 feet? Can you, what I'm asking is it totally unusable if it's a 5-foot setback? It doesn't appear to be,
No,
but I just want to.
I don't think it's totally unusable. It just
more
makes
difficult to use.
It's
Okay.
easier on my neck if I'm looking back there to
Sure.
go hit that.
Does that require more concrete? If you don't, you get the 5, whereas if it's a 2-foot, can you keep the pad?
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Because we know we're going to have to adapt the concrete square footage as well. So that's part that he's probably thinking of that I'm not on this.
So so that I understand, the concrete pad is already within that 2-foot
Yes.
setback? It's been poured?
It's been there since I bought the
And
house.
so you would just build over that essentially?
We would tag on to the back of that.
Okay. And I guess that if you didn't get the variance, you'd leave that there or tear it up, or the overhang?
I don't know what the expense would be to take it out, but we know we'll have to do some mitigation of pervious, because we'll have to add the back, once we have the garage, we'll have to add some concrete to be able to have back out of the garage and go straight. We don't want to be backing in and out of that driveway. We want to be able to turn around and back. So that's all factoring into this as well. So.
Any other questions? Anything else to add?
No, sir.
All right, we'll close the public hearing.
Well, I think we have traditionally looked at situations where you already have a pad poured and we don't have opposition from the neighbor. I think the least intrusive manner of building would be to allow him to build where it's poured. That would be my thought.
Yeah. And there is an existing shed too, which I think he had mentioned in his application that.
Right, for access.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we grant the variance to a 2-foot side setback based upon the existence of the concrete pad that's already poured and lack of opposition from the next door neighbor.
And a motion? And a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Good luck.
Thank you.
Case 2019-240 involving property at 1010 Aladdin Drive. Is the appellant here on this case? She is, okay. This is a request for a variance from setback requirements in order to permit an existing carport and garage overhang. Before you is the zoning map showing you the zoning of the property is RS10. Area photography showing you the property and the surrounding area. This was the site plan submitted by the appellant. And finally, the photograph showing you the current conditions of the property. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 240? Seeing none, the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your desired presentation. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address.
My name is Judy Pegram. I reside at 1010 Aladdin Drive. I purchased the property approximately 35 years ago. I've lived there ever since. I've done a lot of building on that property. I have already built a garage, permitted it, it's been approved, and I've added a carport. And the complaint that was sent in anonymously on a hub website is completely false as to what it actually exists on the property. I've got pictures that I've already sent in the packet. In addition to those, I have an intent for a request for a variance that I have had my neighbors sign. And they have no issues with it. They actually are opposed to me not getting the variance because it makes their property look better. The neighborhood looked better. The construction of it is probably more than codes would require. And I have no issue in permitting it, but did not realize that I had to have a permit because
talking about
it's
for the
not
carport?
attached to my house.
Are you talking about the carport and then the overhang, which is, what is the overhang? Is that just, is it canvas? Is it, where do you see this red? Oh, you're not seeing it up
Yeah,
there.
that's
I'm
somebody
looking at my computer screen that has part of your case file. But what's the overhang on the garage?
It's just a covered area
I
behind.
know, but what's the red part? What material is it?
It's tin.
Okay, so it's just attached to the garage.
It's attached to the
All right.
garage. And it does convey down the side and to my back neighbor, which actually the neighbor on my side is the one who built it for me. I paid him to do it. He has absolutely no problem with it.
Is that the one who's got all the stuff in his yard too?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
Pretty much. Of course, I don't know why nobody complains on anybody but me, but, and I don't even know where the complaint come from.
Yeah, well, now, but your garage is it just a garage? There's nobody it's not a residence?
No.
There's nothing, nobody lives in the garage?
Nobody lives in it. I'm the only one who lives in the whole house.
Okay. And you said the carport's not attached to the house, it's a freestanding?
Now, the carport in between the house and the garage is not attached to the house. I actually just got new insurance.
Yeah.
And we kind of went back and forth. Do we insure it as an attached garage or do we insure it as a detached? Well, it's actually a detached garage because that carport cover does not connect to my house.
Okay.
Then the carport on the side that you can see from the front view of the house, that carport's been there for almost 20 years.
Okay.
And every one of them are on freestanding poles. They have their own gutter systems, and no one has any issues with it, except for this anonymous person that says that it is blocking their line of view. And it's no line of view of a roadway, fire department, police station, nothing. So I don't even know why that there was a complaint.
Okay.
If it was to cause me grief, money, and hardship, they did that.
Yeah. So how long has the overhang been there on the red part of the garage?
Since 2014.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Do you have anything else to add?
I can tell you that NES has signed off on it. There's also a pole, and I've got that marked in my pictures. They were the only ones that I ever had any conversation with, and they sent an engineer out, and I had to readjust the awning because it was close to their electric pole. They came out, the engineer showed me what to do, we did it. We cut the fence to where the gate opens, to where they have access to it, and they signed off of it with no problem.
Okay.
I have one question. So if we go back to before you built this, was there any reason you couldn't have built the garage in compliance with the setback? Was there any kind of hardship that existed that would have prevented you from doing that?
Well, I can tell you that I do have, in my front yard, there is a main sewer drain, and everybody in the neighborhood's water comes to that sewer drain. So I did it actually to try to prevent the runoff from everybody else's yard coming in on my property and flooding my basement. It floods my basement. It floods the back of my house.
Okay, I'm not following you why so.
Because I'm trying to keep the water from coming in on my property from everybody else's, so I built it and put gutters on it and directed it to that storm drain to keep my house from getting flooded. That was one of the issues. It wasn't the main issue, but it was one of them.
Do we know if the actual garage is in violation of the setback, or is it just the overhang?
It's my understanding it's just the overhangs.
I mean, the white 20-year-old carport may be too, but those.
And I have no issues with permitting all of it, if that's what I got to do.
Yeah, that would be a good question. I'd like to know that.
The existing carport is located along the right side of an existing single-family residence. There's a 5-foot setback required, and it looks like their request is for a 0-foot setback.
Well, go to the overhead. It's not on. I mean,
I think the carport is the issue, and then the overhang on the garage. But the garage itself, without the overhang, is not.
Yeah, that was
violation.
Ross's question, I think.
Okay, so the garage itself there's no setback issues with the garage? Because the way I read it,
don't believe so.
number one says existing 8 by 22 carport located along right side of existing single-family residence.
So I think that's the white. I think that's the white. What you see in white on the screen is 141.
I think that's different from the garage. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Is it?
I think that's different from the garage.
The garage is the one that has the gray roof with the red line down it, right?
So it's just the overhang is what we're talking about on all the setbacks?
That's right.
And that's a canvas overhang, essentially?
No, sir, it's made out of tin.
Okay, it's 10.
Wait, I'm sorry. The garage itself is not in violation of the setback. I think the carport is different from the garage, and the carport is in violation of the setback.
And that's the white 141 that's been there 20-some years, she said.
Okay.
Right, that's the one in white,
I think so.
Okay.
So you've got the carport that's in violation of the setback, and then you've got the overhang on the garage.
How is the white building in violation of the setback? It looks like it's right in the middle of the property.
The setback is 5 feet, and this is at 0 feet.
Hey, Ross, it's not the white in the middle, but the white.
Oh, okay, the 141.
Yeah, the one that has the number 141 on it.
So I see now. Okay, I'm sorry. That's so what has the number 141? Is it the carport? And I see where it abuts on the other property line. And then you've had that for 20 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the red part is the 10 on the garage. That's an overhang?
Yes, sir.
And is that enclosed up to that?
No.
Okay. That's just a literal overhang.
It's just an overhang.
Okay.
It's not enclosed.
Okay, I understand.
Well.
And when did you build? When was this?
Take that back. There is a privacy fence that goes around behind my house, but it's not attached to the privacy fence.
Okay, I understand. I got you there. Okay. And when was the red 10 part put on the garage?
In approximately 2014.
Okay.
And then does the neighbor directly behind you, is that neighbor supporting what you're doing?
Yes, and all the signatures is in this letter of intent.
Right, and that includes the neighbor directly behind you?
It includes neighbor front, back, both sides.
Okay.
And even further out than that.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you have to add?
No, sir.
Any other questions? All right.
Isn't there for, this is for the zoning administrator, not for you.
Okay, then we'll close the public hearing.
Okay. If the carport, the part that's 141 has existed for over 20 years, isn't it a prior non-conforming use that's now grandfathered in?
That would depend on whether or not it was conforming when it was initially built.
Okay,
and I'd have to look back at whatever the requirements were.
There's no if it's non-conforming when it's put in,
That's right.
It doesn't become conforming after a certain period of time.
That's right.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean it's not a legally non-conforming structure. I just would have to look to see what the bulk regs were at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of cases where we've had carports where people actually want to build a carport because that's, their driveway's just right there. And generally we, if the neighbors are supportive or permissive, provided that they don't enclose it, that it's as long as it's always a carport, just because there physically is no other place for a carport. But now, again, this board may look at it differently, but yeah, we have a letter of support from the council person. We have wide neighbor support, and it appears that the overhang, while attached to the garage, to me has a temporary aspect to it. So I don't know that I have a problem with that. Then I'll move that we allow the variance to permit the existing carport, provided that the carport is not enclosed, and that the garage overhang is permitted, provided it is maintained in its current, that it is also not enclosed, and just those two conditions.
I'll second.
Have a motion, have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Good luck. That motion passes.
Thank you. Now, I have a question. Okay.
Yeah, just come over and talk to Jessica. She can tell you about what to do and everything else.
Okay, thank you.
Next case.
Next case, 2019-242, involving property at 2666, 2668, and 2670 Miami Avenue. Is the appellant here on this case? Yes, there you are. This is requesting a variance from side setback requirements to construct 3 single-family residences. Before you is a zoning map showing the zoning of the property is R15. Aerial photography giving you a sense of the property and the surrounding areas. Site plan submitted by the appellant, and finally, photographs showing you the current conditions of the property. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 242? Yes, so you'll have, the appellant will have 10 minutes to make your desired presentation. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address. And then opposition, you will have a 10 cumulative minutes, so share that amongst yourselves however you see fit.
Good afternoon. My name is...
Pull that microphone.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Connie Chadwick. I am the president and owner of Chadwick Construction. We are a prospective buyer of this property. I am also an attorney and a member of the bar in Williamson County. I understand some of the concern from the neighbors as they don't know exactly what we are planning to build on this property. But other than that, I'm not sure what the concern is. The history of Miami Avenue, which is a street that runs parallel with Cumberland River, first generation building along this roadway consists of some ranch-style brick homes, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, small type homes. The lot sizes have varied. Some of them are 100 by 100 size lots. There are, I would estimate, half of the lots are around 50 by 100 plus feet in lot size. At some point, all of these lots were reclassified to RS-15, which I'm sure all of you are very aware requires 15,000 square feet for that particular class. So I'm a little confused as to why some of these lots were not classified as R5 to begin with, as these particular lots are 50 by 117, 50 by 118, which by square footage fall just less than 6,000 square feet. What we're asking for today is really just a slight, I'm not asking for a reclassification in to RS5. I thought that the simpler approach would be to ask for a setback exception on side boundaries only, to be able to build the home that we feel would be aesthetically pleasing for progressive Nashville, frankly. These are farmhouses, modern farmhouses, which are the trend in building today. They would increase the value of the property. Historically, there were 3 single-wide trailers here. They were flooded in 2010, destroyed, and they were removed from the property. These were previous rental homes. What currently exists is, frankly, an eyesore. It's an abandoned asphalt lot that is surrounded with a chain link fence. It's not being utilized at all. I can't imagine the tax revenue being collected on this property is beneficial to Metro whatsoever. And so
I've got a question, because ultimately and all that's perfectly fine. The question that we have to answer is, what's the hardship for a side setback variance? And what I see is a perfectly rectangular lot with a 30-foot wide building footprint, which is tell me where there's a hardship in that.
Well, I think that when you look at the neighboring properties that have additional square footage to build on, You're asking a builder to come in and build exceptionally skinny homes because of the new requirements to build up an elevation to exceed the new flood elevation requirements after 2010. They're going to essentially be at least 2 or 3 story properties. And so what the new building trend along Miami Avenue is are 3-story properties, the first level being full basements with either front or side entry garages. Because of the narrowness of these lots, these would be front entry garages. But when you have such a skinny, tall property, I don't think that's as aesthetically pleasing as something that is just simply, it's actually only 3.5 feet wider. But it is actually it's a much nicer home than what's currently already being built. There are at least 6 other new projects that were already built that are similar to this.
Well, it would be 10 foot wider.
I'm sorry?
It would be 10 feet wider, right? You're asking for 5 feet instead of 10 feet.
It made sense to ask for 5 as opposed to 2.5 feet. Sometimes in construction, you can get off just a little bit. But I mean, we could make do with as little as 3 feet.
But I guess ultimately, though, I mean, there's nothing in our criteria that says aesthetics count, all right? And I may believe your argument all day long, but there's nothing on the list of things that I have to judge this thing by in terms of hardship that says it's going to be better because that's the trend now, or what, I mean, and so, you know, if, I guess I'm still having trouble seeing why, I mean, a 30-foot wide house is a pretty big house.
The problem is, in terms of cost of design, when we are restricted to 30 feet in width, the square footage of the home is going to drop around 800 square feet, which restricts the size home, frankly, that we need to build in order to realize any type of profit to make this a feasible project for us. And I think any builder is going to face that challenge with such a narrow lot. I understand that may not be this commission's primary concern, but I do think it would be a benefit to the residential character overall to improve what is now it looks like an abandoned lot.
But the neighbors, the council member and neighbors are saying no. So
well, I think,
where are you? I mean, your thought is it's going to be beneficial to the neighborhood. Where, besides, and again, you certainly entitled and value your opinion, but besides your opinion, who else agrees with you? I mean, because the council member doesn't and the neighbors don't. So why is your vision of Miami Avenue?
well, in all fairness, I haven't heard from anybody.
Right.
They have not asked me directly what our vision for the property is, and they may not have known because they haven't addressed that with me specifically. And my hopes would be, after hearing what the vision is, that they may revisit what their opinion is. I'm curious to hear from them today, and I would obviously like to rebut that if they still are in opposition to that. But I simply can't see how this project would negatively impact this neighborhood whatsoever. It does quite the opposite. It would not negatively impact any of the population density based on its prior use. It's the same number of dwellings. It would only enhance the values in the property. It would enhance property tax revenues for Metro. I just simply can't see asking for a very small side setback variance, that would be an unreasonable request.
Okay. Any questions?
But you're asking for the side setback for each of the 3 lots, so really
Yes.
5 on each side of the 3 lots?
Yes, and the front and rear actually exceed, so there's plenty of room there.
Okay.
Any questions? All right, you will have 6 minutes and 45 seconds for rebuttal, and we'll hear from the opposition.
Hello, my name is Victoria May. I live at 2409 Pennington Bend Road. I'm not directly on Miami, but we consider each other to be neighbors. I saw this and am quite concerned about it, and I'll first point out that nothing you heard from her is any more than profit, profit, profit. That is one of your bases for standards for a variance, is that financial gain can't be the only one of the reasons for the variance. Talks about injury to neighbor property. I am going to tell you that all 3 of these lots are for sale on the internet. It was acquired by the current owner, all 3 lots. They were bought the day after Music City Financial had purchased them from a homeowner that owned it in '06. That homeowner in '06, Michelle can speak to, because she was living there and knows all the details of before the 2010 flood and after. My point is, this is for financial gain. There is a possible, probable harm to public welfare in that when the next flood comes, not if but when, who are you going to get out first? And getting all of us out is going to put a risk to those first responders. And I know they come in and say you need to evacuate or please evacuate, but there are always people that stay. Miami is a double dead-end street with one single access road to Pennington Bend, which has only 2 ways on Pennington Bend to get out. So it's really down a rabbit hole. There's nothing unique about these lots. Everything over there on Miami is flat as a pancake. And these were sold a little bit similar to the earlier case that you heard, 215. These were set as parcels, designed as 50-foot parcels. And everybody that I know of, certainly on Pennington Bend Road, bought several parcels, put them together, built their house. And I just thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle Von Capps, and I own 2672 Miami Avenue, which is right next door to the 2670 of those 3 lots. Those were mobile homes that were there. They were an eyesore. That was, if anything bad or anything good could come from something bad, those mobile homes were grandfathered in. And so that's why they appear the way they do now. And my home, I bought 2 lots, 2672, 2674, and combined them in 2000 to 2672. And I built my little house as a single person. I built my little house in the middle of those 2 lots because a 50-foot lot was too narrow for one home, in my opinion. So I bought 2 lots and built in the middle. The lots next door, those 3 lots, 50-foot lots, of course, most of the homes prior to the flood were not on 50-foot lots. It's been since the flood that those 50-foot lots were built on the tall, skinny houses. And so to have someone build a 3-story home 5 feet from my property line would definitely be a detriment to my property. It would overshadow my property, which is just a 1-story home. And it would just be for financial gain. If it was a homeowner that needed a few extra feet because they needed a garage or, wanted a larger home, that would be beneficial to the neighborhood. But to have 3 houses on those lots, just as the lady described, they would be, to have enough room, regardless of whether she gets a variance or not, it's still going to be tall, skinny houses. I'm actually opposed to having three houses on 3 50-foot lots, and I know that's not really in question today. So I definitely oppose. The lady across the street also owns the property next to 2666, and she has written an email, I believe, in opposition. And other folks that live, Kim Sorensen, Jeannie Seeley, all these folks that live on Miami Avenue that's trying to preserve the feel of the neighborhood on Miami Avenue. But my main, to me, in reading the standards of variance, was the financial gain only, and that's all that I could see that would come out of it, would be just strictly for financial gain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Well, would you have any questions for the applicant? It came out that maybe y'all had not had an opportunity to discuss. I mean, clearly, at some point, those lots in some configuration are going to be buildable. Sometimes we look at these as opportunities maybe to control what occurs. And so I just wonder if you might want to have discussion with the applicant at some point.
Well, of course, in keeping with the neighborhood and what it originally was before the flood happened, it would be, to me, it would be more beneficial to the neighborhood and probably wouldn't be any less financial gain for them if they put 2 houses on those lots instead of 3. In that case, I would be willing to, possibly do a 3-foot, do a 7-foot from the property line instead of 10. I mean, I would be willing to compromise if the homes that were going in didn't look like beach property, in this little quiet residential neighborhood. I would be willing, and I think the rest of the neighbors would be too. We all want development on the street as far as something that would raise property values, and at some point, I would like to add on to my little house, because it's too small for my husband and I. But we would want to do that within codes, which I did when I built my little house. I stayed within those codes. And so, I just, if it was something that wouldn't overshadow the properties next door, which having the 3-story that close to the property line would definitely overshadow the homes on either side, So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While I can appreciate some of their concerns, I would like to address the first Mrs. Remarks. Given that she doesn't even live on Miami, I think that some of her comments should be given a lesser weight than the Mrs. that actually lives next to the property. I think that should be something that should be taken into some consideration. I think I would also like to point out that in terms of new construction and the character of Miami Avenue, a good third of the street has already taken this character of the 3-story new construction. It is no longer, I understand people resist change, they resist some sort of progress, but this is taking place.
Right, but they're not, I mean, did they, are you coming to us with a list of other houses on Miami that got variances?
No, I'm unaware of any variance requests that they may have had.
Right.
But I also want to address the inaccurate statement that the first woman made that these are parcels. That is incorrect. These are not parcels. These are actual individual legal lots. They've never been combined for any purpose. They have had separate addresses. They have had separate units. They've had.
Yeah, I don't think that's a question. Nobody's questioning that here.
Okay.
I mean, you have 3 buildable lots, and your goal here is to tell us what the hardship is to request a variance. So
The hardship is the size of the lot. The other, about half of the street is comprised of only 50 feet of road frontage, okay, which restricts the size of the home to the property owner in which they can build. The other half of the street is comprised of a more adequate amount of road frontage, which is 100 feet. Those homes have the benefit of this particular residential class of RS-15. To be in RS-15 classification, you have to have 15,000 square feet. The problem with the lots that have 50 feet of road frontage is they don't even meet 15,000 square feet, which then also requires the 10 feet side setbacks. The size of this lot is less than 6,000. It's around 5,800 square feet. Had this lot and all the other like lots been properly classified to begin with, we would only be required 5-foot setbacks to begin with. The size house that we're asking to build, we're only asking for a slight variance on the sides. You know, the lady that lives next door is asking this commission to have wide latitude about picking and choosing between which property owners to offer discretion to. If it's a personal residence, sure, maybe allow someone to have a few extra feet to build a residence
I think what I heard her say was if you had an actual plan that you showed us and there was a kind of a good developmental reason to do it, and you stated before that you might need 2.5 feet, you might need 5 feet, you might shift it a little bit, you might shift it another, meaning that you hadn't really quite, I mean, you're asking for the most you can get, which I totally appreciate, but you don't have a plan.
No, we have the plan.
Well, that's not part of any of our records, so that's not, or anything that's public that anybody could see. And so I think what her main concern was that she didn't want, you know, a towering house with, in 5 feet of her yard. She'd like it to be within 10, which is what the code allows. So I mean, I don't think it's necessarily fair to criticize. I mean, I guess I'd really rather steer you back to focusing on the hardship that's not profit motivated solely or aesthetically motivated, which are not criteria that we can base it on. And you did by saying it was the narrowness of the lot in relation to the neighbor, so I understand your argument. You know, and I guess the only last follow-up is, well, yeah, you've already answered. So I was thinking of my question, and I've asked it before, and you answered it. So I just want to make sure I fully understand everybody's side before we decide.
Sure.
So I'm sorry, did you tell me, you still have 3 minutes and 45 seconds if you have anything else to add?
If the commission is disinclined to grant a 5-foot setback, the plan that we have chosen and that we would like to build, the minimum that we could make do with is a 3-foot variance on each side, which would minimize at least some of the impact to the immediate neighbors on both sides. So I just felt like it was a better number to just cut it from 10 to 5 feet just for simplicity. But the minimum that we, in order to build the projects that we want to build, we could live with 3-foot variance exception, if that would be something in the alternative the commission would consider.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Anybody have any questions or?
Well, but your position is you're a prospective buyer, so there's no contract.
There is a contract, but this is part of our due diligence.
Okay.
Yes.
And so if we don't grant a variance, you're going to build, let's say you purchase the property and you're going to build what with your 10-foot setback? So that the neighbors understand.
It will still be a 3-foot structure, just like all of the other new construction. It almost has to be compliant with the elevation requirements for the flood
So what
area.
you can build by law is three-story homes on these, one 3-story home on each of these existing lots.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. Comments? I mean, I just don't find a hardship, but, I mean, I understand the desire and all that. I do think that the lots are different than the neighbors and I do appreciate that piece of it. But you've got a 1,700 square foot buildable footprint. Times 3 is a gargantuan amount of space that you can whittle down. So, I mean, with the footprint that you're allowed to build in, I mean, our architect on the board, I'm sure, could creatively design something, within that. And that's where I'm figuring out, I just don't see the necessity of having this variance.
I don't disagree at all. My only thought would be in a situation like this, and we've done this before, is we have, if something's going to go there, why not, if the neighbors are interested, give them an opportunity to have some discussion? Because I just feel like that gives them more voice than if we grant or do not grant the variance. If we don't grant the variance, and I'm not inclined to, based on what I've heard, I agree there's a lack of hardship. But if the build is going to happen, it gives the neighbors a little more voice. But that would be my only thought.
Well, yeah, I really am more inclined to say, if you have a specific plan that you want to present that has a very specific variance on it, would I be, you want to raise it to the board to consider it within sooner than 6 months rather than later? I might be inclined to hear that, but to me, it's still too vague and still too based on what should be instead of, the true underlying hardship. And it's not a small, I mean, again, if it were a much smaller buildable lot, I totally get it. But this is a giant buildable lot, as is. Okay. So that's just my thought, but I keep looking this way, and I just don't mean to ignore. I've ignored you all day.
No, you have not. I was just trying to figure out what the hardship is, but I understand my colleague's perspective on, like, sort of, if it's going to happen anyway, letting the neighbors have some sort of input. I don't know how you accomplish that, but that's where I am. So
what we've done sometimes is defer a meeting, and maybe there is no consensus, but something's going to happen on that piece of property, and that's my only thought. I mean, it kind of puts everybody in a position to have to give some potentially, but
I see both viewpoints. Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to make a motion, or Ron?
I'm okay with, I don't think there's a hardship, but I think that's a very good proposal and potentially very fruitful for both sides, but.
Well, it's not unusual for us to err on the side of the applicant to give them every opportunity to make something work. I do think that there's a kernel, I don't see the hardship to vote for anything positively today. I think there is a kernel in the sizes of the other lots versus this. But this is, like I said, a gargantuan buildable lot. And so I think that, I'd be willing to defer it either one meeting or two to give the applicant a chance to review the plans with the next door neighbor and other neighbors. And I would say anyone certainly living within the 600 feet or the neighborhood association or what have you, as much neighborhood support as you could get. And, knowing that that probably is going to be the best you're going to get today. But one meeting or two meetings is preferable to you. How much time do you need to?
I won't need much time at all. One meeting's fine.
So we'll defer this one meeting, and you've heard the concerns. You've heard the concerns about hardship, so you know where we are. Adjust accordingly, and we will move to defer this one meeting. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. That is deferred one meeting. Thank you. Good luck.
Next
All right.
case,
Yeah,
2000.
I'm sorry, we do have, the next case, we have about 8 more cases. We will lose quorum at 5:30, just to set expectations with the audience.
The short-term rental case is all deferred.
They have, okay.
So we've got.
We're going to do our best to get through them. If we don't get to your case, we sincerely apologize, but we will hear it first at the next meeting. But we had several unexpectedly long cases today, and that's just the reality. Okay, next case.
Next case, 2019-243, involving property at 437 Dennis Drive, requesting a variance from setback requirements to construct a single-family residence without building sidewalks or paying into the sidewalk fund. Is the appellant here in this case? Oh, that's not you? Okay, I thought you were waving your hand that it was. Is the appellant here on 243, 437 Dennis? Mr.
All right.
Chairman?
Yeah, we will, I'll move that we defer this one meeting. And there's no opposition to 243? Okay, well, on the odd chance that the appellant's outside and comes back, we can take it up if we have time. Otherwise, we'll move to defer it to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Done. Okay, 240, what's the next one?
Next one is 258. No? Yeah, 258. Is that you, Dwayne?
Yes. Got your name on it, 258?
This is case 2019-258 involving property at 906 Albert Court, requesting a variance from sidewalk requirements to construct a single-family residence without building sidewalks or paying into the sidewalk fund. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 258? Before you is the zoning map showing the zoning of the property is R20. Aerial photography showing you the surrounding area. Site plan submitted by the appellant. And finally, the photograph showing you the current conditions of the property. No opposition present, so the appellant will have 5 minutes to make your desired presentation. Please be sure to identify yourself by name and address.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dwayne Cuthbertson, 1806 Allison Place, and with me I've got Jason and Shannon Ryan, the owners of the property. We are here on behalf of 906 Albert Court, and as Ms. Lamb explained to you, we're requesting a variance of the sidewalk requirement. We're asking for a variance of the requirement to construct, but also a variance of the requirement to, or the option to pay the fee in lieu. This is a fairly unique case in that the Ryans bought the existing house to use as a personal residence in 2018 with the intent of adding living area and using the existing footprint of the structure as a guide for their renovation and addition. So construction, or I should say the renovation and addition, commenced in 2018. They went down to codes and they were issued a renovation and addition permit. With renovation and addition permits, sidewalks are not required. You can add on as much as you want. Sidewalks are not required. You have to dedicate right-of-way, but you don't have to build a sidewalk. You don't have to pay the fee in lieu. So the Ryans went down and pulled that permit with the addition of popping off the roof and adding a second floor to the structure. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, when you get into renovations of old houses, you start peeling back the layers and surprises occur. So the Ryans start doing the renovation and peeling back sheetrock and floors and finding surprise after surprise after surprise. They continue going down the road for months. They are engaged with structural inspectors from Metro. They're engaged with mechanical inspectors from Metro. And they're moving along. And then along comes Metro's electrical inspector and reviews the nature of the work and starts seeing how much of the existing structure had to be peeled back and replaced, and informed them through their builder that they can't proceed, they can't continue under a renovation addition permit. They have to cancel that permit and get a new construction permit. So they go down to codes and they pull the new construction permit, and the consequence of that is sidewalks are required now. So they're halfway through, not quite halfway through construction, and all of a sudden they find out that because the nature of their permit had to change because of all the surprises they kept finding, now they're additionally penalized with the sidewalk requirement.
So if they had known when they started this project that they were going to have to do the extent of the work, and had they gotten the type of permit that they were ultimately required to build, they would not have had to have sidewalks because they would have been in before the sidewalk ordinance, or no?
No. It's the nature of the type of permit. So they got an addition renovation permit, with the intent of using, and they are still continuing to use the existing footprint and a good portion of the existing walls, but they've had to peel back more of the onion than they initially expected. So if they had been able to continue on with the renovation addition permit, sidewalks aren't required. At no point would they have had to either construct a sidewalk or pay the fee in lieu to continue on with their permit.
But everything was permitted after the sidewalk ordinance passed?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any idea what it will cost to contribute to the in lieu of fund? You've done the rough math on that.
The full requirement is just under 40,000. This is a cul-de-sac lot.
126 foot of frontage would be around 40,000.
Well, the 126 was planning's recommendation, and they were considerate in giving or assigning half of the frontage to this lot.
So the frontage is really more like 250.
Yes.
And planning's recommendation, they agreed to. Their recommendation is you contribute for 126 feet on 126 feet.
It's like 19,000.
So they cut it in half, essentially.
They cut it in half. Our argument lies in the spirit of the construction, that it's still in spirit a renovation addition scope of work.
Because you didn't change the footprint.
If I may, yes,
State your name.
Yes, my name is Jason Ryan. We reside at 906 Shelby Avenue currently. I'm joined by my wife of 12 years, 123 days, and after this project, you understand why I'm counting the days down. So it's been quite stressful throughout this whole process. And yes, Dwayne, when we originally had bought this property, I'm a unicorn, native Nashvilleian. I knew the area very well. My wife and I have always dreamed of living in this area. My son goes to school right up the road, so this was just our dream project to be able to jump into. And understanding that remodel permit, we decided that we wanted to try and design a house specifically to fit on that current footprint. Just budgetary purposes, everything, it is going to cost a whole lot more to be able to tear this house down, tear the slab out, and then completely start over again. So that was ideally for us, in order to fit within our budget, we needed to stay within that footprint. So you can see along the time frame of those pictures that we submitted that we have done everything we can in order to keep the existing exterior in place, all the way down to the point of sandblasting the brick in order to match the brick from the previous structure. And this was a complete shock to us. Like we said, we went down to permits. We applied for our remodel permit. We submitted our floor plans, exactly what we were planning on doing, and we obtained those permits. We wanted to do the right thing. And that's, once we got into this project, we both were kind of taken back that, this is no longer a new build. The framing inspector came through. Renovation. The framing inspector came through, and he was the first one to come through. And you can imagine looking at a project where you can see in the very last picture, the existing walls were in place. The existing pictures that I submitted to you guys, the walls were still in place while the interior framing still going on. So we did everything we could in order to do that. I would like to also add that in the area, I also submitted, all of our neighbors as well are completely against building a sidewalk. There's a lot of areas that 9 out of the 11 homes on the cul-de-sac have all been built in the last 3 years. So there's not going to be a sidewalk ordinance. They're all saying this is a sidewalk to nowhere. And quite honestly, because of the amount of time and effort that we put into the peeling back of all the walls and the remodeling, that we are considerably over budget. And this has kind of been a really big, this is on D-Day for a reason for us.
And it's not just, there's other hardships too. I mean, there's other hardships too, as far as like the drainage, there's an electric pole, NES pole, where they're wanting the sidewalk. There is a big, I think, oak tree that, all the neighbors are completely against tearing that down because Kids, literally, there's a picture in our exhibits of a little girl that reads a book there almost every day after school and stuff. So there's a lot of other hardships, not just financial, but is obviously a hardship for us, but a lot of other hardships. But the main thing, I think, the main point that we want to hammer home is this truly was a renovation. And renovations permits
qualify for-
do not have to have the sidewalk.
Okay. Are there any questions? All right, our time.
Who owns 904B?
Just one of the neighbors.
It was an HPR
Yeah.
property, so prior to us buying this one, someone had bought 904B, so then they split it off into 906.
And they actually are in our favor. There's a letter in there from them too. Pretty much everybody on the street agrees with us. They don't see the benefit of it.
All right, any other questions? Thank you. We'll close the public hearing. I think this does to me feel a little extraordinary.
Did anybody come to speak in opposition? I see we have some letters in opposition. Okay.
No, I would like to add that Russ Pulley, we spoke with him, and he's not challenging as well.
Yeah, he said, he would not oppose it at all.
Yeah, I don't know there's somebody from Timber, I'm not sure where Timber Lane is, but then there were others in the court that supported the variance. Thoughts?
I think a reduced fee is fine. I just don't know what that is right now.
Are you saying planning is recommend essentially cutting it in half, which I think is fair.
It's a remodel.
Planning didn't know it was a remodel.
Yeah, guys, the public hearing's closed, so we're discussing.
sorry.
So, yeah, I'm sorry but, yeah,
Well, but as I understand it, based on what they just said, the scope of construction changed so that it triggered the sidewalk requirement. And they didn't expect that and understand that. And that is part of their hardship, as I understand it, is they didn't expect that the scope of work was going to trigger this.
Well,
and
yeah,
it did.
it sounds like, you get in there and your house is rotten.
Yeah,
and you didn't know it was rotten,
and
and yet everything about it, and were you to just do what you'd planned, it would be fine. And then all of a sudden, not only are you having to rebuild a house, but you got to pay for a sidewalk that you weren't required to do had the house not been rotten. So, to me, it's just something that we just don't hear. And because they wouldn't have, because they didn't change the footprint, because the plans are made around the renovation. I'm personally happy just considering it as a renovation and granting the variance, but that's just me. Because I think if the footprint was radically changed, if all of a sudden, they scraped it to the ground, early on, and, then you think, well, maybe the intent's a little different. But to me, this was all about trying to renovate it, and within that law, they wouldn't be required to do this. It was triggered by things outside of their control, but not outside of the plan. And I think it's a fair enough, to me, I think it's a fair enough variance, but you may not agree.
Well, the fact is it was triggered, and for everybody that it's triggered for, and they don't have to build, what planning is recommending is they don't have to build the sidewalk. I get that there's a hardship with respect to the trees, but, and they are, I think, Chairman Taylor, you're right, there is a uniqueness to this, but on a lot of these sidewalk cases, it seems to me that there's some degree of uniqueness, and then the overarching fact here is that the Metro Council enacted this ordinance, and under the Metro Council ordinance, they'd be required to contribute for twice the amount of footage that planning is allowing them to contribute for, and I understand what you're saying, which is what, they didn't get into this. But we've had other people up here who said, I undertook all this before I even realized there was a sidewalk ordinance. And in fact, we had some people from over in the Belmont area that were the couple that was building the house on the corner, and that happened to them too. They just didn't realize that they were going to have to, put in sidewalks. So I think what planning is, I think the sidewalk ordinance was triggered. It's triggered for a lot of people, and I think that planning's proposition is fair. So.
Do you have is that a motion?
Sure. I will move to approve the variance with the conditions placed on it by planning, which would be that the applicant contribute to the in lieu of fund for the frontage on unit 904A's limited common element of 126 feet, and that they dedicate the right-of-way along the property frontage for a future sidewalk.
Is there a second? There's a motion, there's a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That does not pass. Yeah, I can't get past that 126 feet being excessive, and I think it's an excessive lot. I could vote for a standard 50-foot lot, but I can't vote for 126 because I think it's exceptional. But that said, it may have the same outcome result by not voting at all. I don't think there has to be.
Stay on until next meeting.
Yeah, it'll
We'll
stay on
hopefully
the
have
next
some
meeting,
more.
and we can consider it at that time. All right. Sorry. Good luck. And the last case we have, last case that we have for today, and we don't have a lot of time for it, but we will hear as much as we can.
You've got 15 minutes for this one. It's 2019-259 involving property at 1311 4th Avenue North, requesting a variance from parking requirements to convert an existing single-family residence into a bar. The parking requirement count that is required, that is in the code is 36 spaces. The appellant is asking for 17. There is opposition here, so each side will have 10 minutes to make their presentation. Opposition, bear in mind that this is 10 cumulative minutes, so divide that how you see best fit among yourselves.
Is that 10 minutes each going to work if we lose a quorum at 5:30? Because that's going to put us. That means we have 10 minutes right now before we lose a quorum.
I'll go to 5:40, but that's it.
So that's 5:40. So
I mean, that's going to put, if they both use 10 minutes, it's still going to put us right at. I know they wait around. I'm not trying to create a problem here. I hate.
We can defer if that's required.
What's that?
We can defer to the next meeting if that's needed.
I'm willing to try, but I'm just afraid that if it gets.
Well, I guess the bottom line to me is I don't want things to feel rushed. Mm-hmm. And I think I do want, but I know that everybody's been here and has sat for a long, long time.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But I also know that both sides want to say their full story, and everybody's going to be looking at the clock. So I think I'm okay. It'll be probably either first, second, or third. I know we told two others that they would be first, but those actually, one was on the consent agenda, and unless something radically changes, probably will continue to be. That was just have their council member look at it. So I think that we'll put it as close to the top of the agenda as we can on the next meeting. Is that?
Yeah, I definitely think put it as far as we can up on the agenda. So.
Does everybody agree? Is that a motion?
Yeah, I would move we defer it till next meeting and move it as high as we can on the agenda. If we've already committed to other applicants, then they'd have to come behind them.
Is there a second? Have a motion, have a second. All in favor? Aye. Right. Again, apologies to everybody who's been here, but it will be first next time. And the bad news is you sat here and got to see what we do at all of our meetings. The good news is that you will have a fresh group next time to hear it more thoroughly and with a lot fresher ears. And You won't have to sit through the whole meeting again unless you choose next time. But appreciate everybody coming out.
Before the hearing and have time to review it. Jessica Shepherd.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.